2021 Rappahannock County Candidate Forum. Tonight's event is sponsored by Rappahannock News and Businesses of Rappahannock. I'm Teresa Wood, the president of Businesses of Rappahannock, and your MC for this evening. You're very winded with a mask on, MC. Sorry for that. Thank you for attending tonight, and for those of you who are watching from home, or maybe will be watching from home at some point, welcome as well. Tonight's event is being live streamed and recorded once the internet is back up, courtesy of our co-host at the Rappahannock News, Mr. Dennis Brock. If you would like to review tonight's event when you're back at home, you can see a recording of this on the rappahannocknews.com website. It'll be under the video tab. Thank you to all the volunteers who have made this event possible. I'd like to acknowledge several of the Businesses of Rappahannock board members who are here tonight. Our organization is an all-volunteer group that serves the business community in Rappahannock County. Melissa Schooler will be our timekeeper this evening. She's hiding in the wings there. Sheila Whaley is guarding the door there, Robert Archer, and Drew Beard. Thank you all for being here tonight. Very quickly, tonight's program is a bifurcated program. There will be alternating sets of candidates on stage. School board will be first, followed by the Board of Supervisor candidates. Each group of candidates will have a different moderator this evening. It's important to understand that this is not a debate. The candidates will not be responding to each other, but instead they will be responding to you, the voter. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for an opening statement. The candidates will then answer questions posed by the moderator. In the interest of time, we have 2-minute time limits set for answers. Rebuttals are at the discretion of the moderator, and they are limited to 1 minute. There will be a 2-minute closing statement from each candidate, followed by questions from you, the audience. The candidates have not seen the questions that will be asked tonight. We are on a very tight schedule. The candidates have been advised that we will enforce time limits. They can see a timer up here on stage to help themselves. As with any forum or debate, we ask that you hold your applause until the candidate makes his or her closing statement. This is in the best interest of our tight schedule tonight. We ask that you be respectful of the candidates, the moderator, your friends and neighbors who are sitting to your left and right. This is not the place for booing, shouting, or cheering of any kind. You will have the opportunity in November to make your voice heard loud and clear. Do vote. Disrespectful or inflammatory statements will not be permitted. Your hosts are committed to having a respectful dialogue this evening. Tonight, you'll learn many things about the candidates, including their position on important issues in Rappahannock County. You will also see how they respond to pressure and to each other and how they follow the rules. All of these components are part of the person who will serve Rappahannock County in the coming years. Listen carefully and watch closely. Candidates, if you would please go ahead and proceed to the stage, school board candidates. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce our school board candidates, Rachel Bynum, incumbent, Piedmont District, and her opponent, Lila Fletcher, write-in candidate for Piedmont District. Larry Grove, incumbent, Stonewall Hawthorne District, and his opponent, Roderick Osborne. Welcome. The moderator for the school board candidates is Mr. John Sullivan. From 1975 to 2010, Mr. Sullivan was the DC-based magazine publisher of The Atlantic, National Journal, The Hotline, and Congress Daily. He and his wife Beverly have been homeowners in Rappahannock since 1986. Many of you know him as the former mayor of Washington, Virginia, a position he held for 8 years. Mr. Sullivan has moderated many debates during the past 10 years, including the Rappahannock County Sheriff's Debate, Board of Supervisors, and Congress. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Sullivan.
All right, good evening all. Can we hear okay? Masks, all that stuff? We're going to get started, but one quick item. I'm going to ask a question of every single person in this room. And I'm going to ask you to raise your arm, your hand, if you love Rappahannock, you cherish our school system, you love living here. We do not have to talk too much during this debate about how the value of children and how important they are to our county, because we all agree on that. So let's just, as a start, since we'll have an active debate, raise your hand if you know, it's our county, your county. Okay, everybody is familiar with the pandemic, and I hope we don't have to spend too much time on it. And I hope we don't necessarily have a lengthy debate about the pros and cons of certain aspects of the pandemic. But, and I'm going to start with you, Rachel, we're going to do this boom, boom, boom. There's been a lot of controversy. I would not have wanted to be Shannon, the toughest job in the world.
Are we going to make opening statements first?
Pardon?
Are we making opening statements first? Or
You're absolutely right. I blew it. I blew it. Opening statements, I blew it.
Okay.
Rachel?
Oh, you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Mr. Sullivan. Thank you. And we love Rappahannock County and the schools. I will start my opening statement. Thank you for the invitation. Although I am an incumbent, this is my first time actually participating in this forum, and I'm glad for the chance to introduce myself because I was running unopposed last time. I didn't get the chance to do that. I have enjoyed serving with my colleagues on the Rappahannock County School Board since 2018. I bring with me to the board a variety of relevant experience. In teaching, I spent 5 years after graduating from college as an outdoor educator and team building instructor. I've been a mom for 16 years, 10 of which are as an active parent of 2 students at Rappahannock schools. In the community, I'm a farmer and a small business owner, operating Waterpenny Farm in Sperryville since 2000 with my husband, Eric. I've volunteered many, many hours with our community theater and environmental groups, as well as in our schools. I know that Rappahannock can be a good and healthy place to move and to start a family and a business, and I believe that having good public schools for our kids to attend is crucial to our success as a community in the future. The past 3.5 years have been an exciting time to be on the school board. Our schools have added some important new features. We now have a licensed school social worker supporting our students in need. We have secured grants to fund some remarkable initiatives, including Commit to be Fit, which improves wellness at school, Family Futures for financial literacy, and a newly opened school-based wellness clinic for students and school families. We also now have a STEAM lab and courtyard outdoor learning classroom at our elementary school, thanks to generous donations. During my time on the board, I have privately and publicly fielded many questions and concerns from school families and community stakeholders. Constituents can contact me and know that I will hear them and I will respond appropriately. I'll be unafraid to ask questions on their behalf and will make the best judgments I can, even tough ones, considering all the facts of the matter. I love Rappahannock County and I believe in our schools. I care deeply about the health, safety, and well-being of our students and staff. And if reelected, I will continue to give my best for the kids.
Thank you. Leela?
Lilla.
Lila. I said that
I
earlier.
knew you'd get it
This
wrong.
is not my day.
When I was thinking about running for the school board, I actually was reminded of a story that I was told when I was young, and it was by a woman who I care for greatly. She actually still works in our elementary school cafeteria, and what she would tell me was that when she was younger and her children were in school, that she would go and she would pick up all of the children whose parents were late picking them up. She would take them over to her house, she'd feed them, she'd make sure that they were taken care of, and then when their parents were available to actually pick them up, they could just go right there. This story reminds me of why Rappahannock is a place that is built on the trust that we have for our neighbors. We are a community that really strives to work together to build the best community that we possibly can. And ever since having my son, I dove in. I dove into this community. I built Helping Hannock. I did the Rappahannock Warriors delivery service to ensure that all of our immunosuppressant could receive the food and the care and attention that they needed. So now I'm here. I'm running for school board, and I am doing so because I believe that the parents have a right and the privilege to be able to have a say in what our school system really holds true to them. And that we have a community that is based on trust, and we can trust in our neighbors and respect them and build our school system to be the very best that we can by going, you know what? Our school is one of the highest employers of our entire county. Our teachers, our staff, everyone is a part of this community, and we can look at them and we can say, good job, you care, and I trust you. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry?
Good evening. I'm Larry Grove, and I bring both common sense and experience to the Rappahannock County Public Schools. Experience due to my 54 years of educational background as a coach, a teacher, an administrator, and school board member for the last 8 years. Experience due to my connections with the county. 20 years of volunteer fire department rescue squad. My wife's, I guess this is a good thing, my wife's roots with the Johnson family from the Red Oak Mountain. And common sense because I'm committed to students of Rappahannock. And I understand how to move forward with issues. We went from football to governor's school. We went from reading and math specialist to working with kids that are 4 years old. And that's the way a board is supposed to work. I'm especially proud of the board's return of approximately $445,000 to the county over the last 7 years. Many say that the most important decision a school board can make is the hiring of a superintendent. And I think the hiring of Dr. Grimsley is proof in the pudding that we have made really good decisions over the last 7 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Rod?
Thank you. First of all, good evening, and thank you to businesses of Rappahannock, Rappahannock News, of course, the school administration for allowing us to facilitate this forum here this evening, and a special thank you to the audience who've taken time to be here this evening for this forum in this very important election. My name is Rod Osborne, and I am running for the school board representative in the Stonewall-Hawthorne district. I've lived in Castleton for 20 years. My wife and I relocated here in the hopes of raising our family, our children in a county that had wholesome values, and we're very glad we did so. Our youngest daughter graduated from Rappahannock County in 2017. We're proud of the fact that she was part of the undefeated volleyball team in that year, and she participated in states and track every year as well. And without the opportunity she had here at Rappahannock High School, she wouldn't have been in the Coast Guard Academy in which she serves now in her 4th year of the academy. I recently retired as a major and administrator for a large public safety agency in Prince William County after serving them with distinction for 35 years. So you might want to ask, why am I running for a public office after recently retiring? I've been asked that question a number of times on my door-to-door campaign, and the answer is pretty simple. I care about the directions of the schools in our community, and I want to make a difference. You don't have to look far to see some of the policies and the decisions that school boards have made in our region and localities that have had a negative impact on the families and the children that attend the schools. I want to make sure that the impacts that affect Rappahannock counties are positive and lasting. With your help and support, I hope to make our board better, stronger, and I hope to serve this county as a board member for years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rod. Thank all of you. Now I will ask a question. We've been, as I suggested, we've been through a lot. Everybody's familiar with it. I'm starting with you, Rachel. You are first in the questions. What is it that we've learned, or what have you learned about how the county as a whole, the parents, the school board, the administration, as to how we have dealt with this pandemic experience, which has been rough on everybody? Will there ever be another one? Who knows? But when you look back as to how decisions were made, do you have any kind of thoughts or observations?
Yes, I do. Last year was the first full school year of the pandemic. And well, starting from the spring before last, when we closed down suddenly because of COVID, it was an abrupt change. And I think that honestly, initially, it felt like a little bit of a holiday for quite a few people. And then we realized that it's not a holiday being out of school. We did a great job during the full last school year. We had a lot of flexibility in what we could do. We had a split schedule. We had everything from fully virtual to 4-day a week to A/B days for students to attend. And our teachers did a tremendous job of just starting off with Canvas, learning how to conduct online courses. It was a huge challenge, and it was particularly hard on the youngest of our students, the kids who really need to have sort of face-to-face contact in order to learn, especially with families that might not have an adult at home. Most families, they work. You know, the parents work. They can't spend a lot of time with their kids. But we did a great job during last year. We only had, I think, 4 cases total of COVID in our schools. It was the alpha strain. It was not as contagious. And we were applauded. We were recognized for our excellent job of keeping school open and being safe during the pandemic in the last school year. Over this summer, a sort of strange thing happened to where the mitigation measures, what we had was plenty of social distancing. Everybody wore masks without issue during the last school year. During the summer, something shifted. I think it was partly because for a minute we thought that, hey, we're vaccinated and it seems like COVID is done, and so we can stop wearing our masks. And that flipped into we never want to wear a mask again, and that whole year that was successful was almost forgotten about, unfortunately. I came back suggesting that we just start with what we had been doing this previous year with great success. There were about 30 people who showed up at a meeting who really forcefully insisted that we not have masks. And but it's been sad because in our first two weeks, we had 150 people out on quarantine. We had 30 cases of COVID in our schools. So I think that we did a great job initially, and then I think we tried to relax a little bit too much. Currently, we're doing a good job again. So.
Lila, what is your thoughts? Same question.
How the county as a whole has dealt with the pandemic. So when COVID first hit, I just started helping Hannock, and I was welcomed into the preparedness meetings with the entire community. And I cannot tell you what hope that gives you. You have an entire community focus on ensuring that not a single person is left behind. It gave me such hope. We had the Rappahannock Warriors who had over 70 community members who just wanted to help. And when you realize that your neighbors are willing to help you like that, it's amazing. And you just feel like you are in the best place in the entire world, which is really how I view Rappahannock. So then you look at the school system, and there's such a struggle there. And one of the biggest differences that I see now versus what we dealt with last year in the school system is that the state's requirements have actually kind of shifted a focus. Last year was keep everyone safe, This year, it's keep everyone in school. So it kind of sounds like it's the same thing, but it's not really, because the school is only allowed to close down for a total of 10 days. This has created quite the struggle. And the beginning of the year, when we ended up having that forced lockdown from the 35 students who ended up contracting COVID, the school took it upon themselves. They presented it in front of the VDH. The VDH said, "I'm sorry, you don't have enough sick kids." So our school took it upon themselves to close down anyways and use those 10 days that they're allotted to ensure that our children are safe. This focus that our school actually has on safety first, the ability to have a contact tracing team inside of our school, an epidemiologist on staff, the ability to work with and actually lead the VDH in their mitigating measures for other schools is far surpasses the majority of schools in our area. And I applaud the school system.
Thank you very much. Larry,
Sure.
and can I ask everybody to be
I'm
cautious
watching
on the
the clock,
time? Yeah.
thank
We're
Sorry.
gonna go- That's okay, no, don't worry.
I seldom speak more than 2 minutes at a time anyway. The COVID year was a very trying year for the board, for the superintendent, for the staff, right down to the cafeteria staff that provided food for every kid in the county every day of school. The lunches were delivered by bus drivers. We did a great job of providing our kids with a safe environment and a learning environment. We provided hotspots all over the county. Instruction slowed down, obviously, but it didn't stop like it did in many school systems. We were applauded by the state superintendent, and for the work that Dr. Grimsley and her staff did during the COVID crisis. I think we started off roughly this year, as was mentioned. I think we've got it back to some degree of sanity, one would say, and we're moving forward from that perspective. I told you.
Thank you. Nice job. Points for Rod.
I'm not sure if I remember the specific question, but I think we're just going to go ahead and talk about the impacts of COVID in our community. I know that when COVID hit last year, I was an administrator for a facility that was responsible for 1,000 inmates and 400 staff, and it was unprecedented times. None of us have encountered anything quite like that. I can't imagine having a child of school age having to go through the year that they went through last year. Having said that, and reviewing what Rappahannock Schools has done during the pandemic, I have to give Dr. Grimsley a huge amount of recognition for her efforts. The tone that they have set and the practices they employed are looked at from other schools and copied. Dr. Grimsley keeps everybody apprised with the dashboard for the schools, tracking the cases for staff and students alike. It's an interesting time for all of us, and I know it's a hot topic, and somehow or another we've managed to politicize a pandemic, but the primary function of the school system has been to protect the children, and I think they've done a fantastic job at that.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question, we're going to start with Lila. Everybody's familiar, when we get off the pandemic, everybody's familiar with the declining population issue. It's been going on for a number of years. It's not clear to me that this Board of Education can actually solve that problem in terms of population, growth in this county. But nevertheless, it's something that's there, and one might believe that another 2-3 years from now, it could be down another 100, some number.
Another 100.
If you look through the trend line, you can see how the school population would continue to There's also, I think, the issue that the school has competitors in the sense of schooling at home and private schools. There are choices that parents can make for the children. What are your thoughts on that subject? How would you approach that sort of economic model issue of student decline?
Absolutely. Actually, I have been going door to door and I've been asking people about this issue because our declining student enrollment is something that affects all of us. And I do have people who are questioning the number of students that we have in our school and if our school is actually necessary in a community our size. One of the things that I just have to say is that our county public school is Rappahannock's future. We have a ability to really start trends here because if you look at how our school created such innovative programs during the pandemic and are continuing to do so, you realize that Rappahannock County Public School is starting to be able to really start providing a private school experience in our public school. We have the academic track, which is all about the personalized passion of students. And we have our elementary school teachers are using not only visual teaching methods, but they're using auditory and kinesthetic as well, which is the well-rounded experience for our children. And they are having, due to our actual lower student population, we have individualized attention that makes sure that every kid is at the forefront, every kid is focused on, and that less students are left behind or neglected. I love that we have a quiet corner in all of our elementary schools so that our children can take out their frustrations in life safely. And we have all of these programs that just makes me so excited. I mean, I am so excited for the way that our public school is headed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Larry?
Sure. Population. When I moved here in '99, we had about 1,100 kids in the school system. We're down to about 760 at this point in time. And I think a lot of that has to do with housing. I think there is no place for young people to live and bring up a family. And I think that's an issue that I hope the board, the county board, the board of supervisors will deal with some way or other. I do believe that we bring a product that people want. And it's a career development product. It's an academies product. We've started an academies program for young people. We want every senior to graduate with a skill and an ability to do whatever they want to do at their graduation. And the base of that is rigorous instruction. And I think we've worked really hard to develop a staff development, career development program for every kid from that perspective.
Thank you. Rod?
When I first started running for the school board, there was a little rumor going around that some of our children would be farmed out to other localities for schools and that there's a possibility that our school system would be shut down. Clearly that was just a rumor, but when it bothered me to hear that. And I met with Dr. Grimsley early on in my campaign to get a sense of her feelings on enrollment and the numbers of the students attending the school. And clearly COVID had an impact on the numbers of children that you see that are being homeschooled and sent to private schools as well. The average daily membership of the school has declined, and that's not a secret. There are a number of contributing factors to that. There's something called the LCI, the Local Composite Index, which is everything that affects the land income and affects the membership of the schools. I think that perhaps we should just wait to see how things improve when COVID starts to settle down and things return to quote-unquote normal. But I think the schools they do have a lot of programs in place that should be enticing to students and to families that want to move here. I think that we just have to wait and see how that's going to pan out.
Thank you. Yes. You wanted-
Okay.
Okay, let's do,
I didn't respond yet to your question.
pardon?
I didn't respond
Started with
yet
Lily.
Yeah,
Going this
to your
way.
question.
Rachel has to respond as well.
I'm sorry, Rachel. I'm really blowing it tonight. I'm sorry.
Well,
Listen, I'm penalizing you every step
I
along the
know,
way.
man, I know, and it's my first forum,
we'll keep
too,
you straight,
know.
don't worry.
You guys keep it going.
Well, I just have some
Jesus.
current numbers that I just think that would be interesting for all of us to know. Our school enrollment in September was 748. In October, it's 731. We get a report every month as school board members on the actual enrollment. So one of the big differences between the private schools in this county and the home schools in this county at the outset of the school year was masking policy. The two private schools in this county had unequivocal policies for masking in schools. That felt safe to parents because that was what the current recommendation that the CDC and Virginia Department of Health, in fact, were making at the time. I know a lot of families at school, and a lot of people really did agonize over leaving the school that they love, but there are people, including a friend of mine with an autoimmune disorder who is now homeschooled, started off, would have loved to have stayed in our school. We are bleeding students right now during the pandemic, actually because of the rough start we had in the school year. I'm hopeful that with really good enforcement of our new policies, of our renewed good policies towards mitigating COVID, we'll be able to attract people back to our school because we have a lot of good things going on here. We have an amazing set of career tracks and academic tracks for students. We can offer anything on Virtual Virginia. We can offer a really good programs in the arts and in any kind of, it's just a great school. There's great caring for all the kids. And it's disappointing that we can't say, it's disappointing that so many people have actually come to the point of not feeling like they were safe sending our kids to school, their kids to school. That's the root of this decline, this sharp decline that we've seen recently. Right now, there are also 97 homeschool students, as opposed to a year ago, there were 73 homeschool students.
Right.
So we're dealing with current issues, which is actually a reflection of the pandemic and our reaction, unfortunately, to not be taking COVID seriously at the outset of school. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but that's where we are right now, and I think we're going in good direction, but that is where we are now.
Thank you very much, all of you. Next question, starting with Larry. Many of you are familiar with an analysis that a lot of organizations do called a SWOT analysis, where you talk about the strengths of an organization and the weaknesses and the opportunities for growth and threats and so on. I'm going to ask you to start off talking about the weaknesses of the Rappahannock school system. And I don't mean that in the sense of looking to trash the Rappahannock school system. But every organization has some weaknesses and some challenges that all of us, people want to deal with, need to deal with. What would you prioritize? What weaknesses are there in the system that you think the new board should focus on?
I think you're right. I think every organization has strengths and weaknesses. And to not recognize weaknesses is kind of putting your head in the sand. I think one of our biggest weaknesses is numbers of kids, the ability for kids in Rappahannock to have the same education that kids in Arlington or big cities have. We don't have a problem with money, and that's a benefit to our system. Our Board of Supervisors have done a great job of providing us with funds to create academies, be able to provide kids with all kinds of skill sets that they will need to graduate with. I think our biggest, I wouldn't even call it a weakness, but our need is to have a better idea of where we're going to be going in 10 years.
Right. Okay. Ron?
Well, I'd like to call them challenges instead of weaknesses. There's
And that's, yeah.
deficiencies in every organization exist, and it's a challenge. Obviously, the biggest challenge this past year has been the COVID and the masking. And contrary to what was said earlier, I've run into a number of families on my campaign. A gentleman just the other day who had 4 children that he pulled out of the school system because he didn't want his children to wear the mask all day. So there's both sides of that. I think that it's important for the children, and just based on the experience of my involvement when my daughter was going through the school, and that a lot of that is also contingent on the numbers, is the athletics. I think it's very important for high school athletics to exist and to be available to children. I think it teaches teamwork, it teaches leadership, teaches them to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And most of the children of Rappahannock High School have to be multiple sports active. They leave from one practice, they go to another. It's important to keep those athletics available to all the children and improve upon them, maybe even offer them more options. But some of that is contingent on the numbers, as I've said. So I haven't really witnessed any real weaknesses in the information I've looked over. I've been attending the school board meetings since I decided to run. And as my opponent said, that the finances is not an issue. Some people would like to talk about the budget. I don't know if that's on your agenda of questions, but I would like to put an emphasis on athletics. I think that's important.
Thank you. Rachel.
Hi. So I agree that weaknesses are actually growth areas for the school. I think that one thing that I witnessed when I first moved here and I saw big shows on this stage and amazing productions was that there were lots of parents who had the time and energy to put into being involved in our schools. Currently, our population doesn't have as many parent volunteers. It's difficult. I mean, our PTO is 3 or 4 people. The first meetings I went to were more like 15 or 20 people. There's something that's happened. Maybe it's just everybody is spread too thinly and doesn't have time. But I think that our schools could be boosted a lot if we could figure out ways to create better parent involvement. And that's something that, making sure that everybody who's had something to contribute feels welcome in that. And I don't know the magic thing for that, but that is a difference, and a difference in what we've been able to do. I think that in lacking a middle school per se, we do that transition. We're working with 8th grade academy, but that transition from elementary to high school is an area that I'm happy to see our elementary school and our high school principal working together now. But I do think that rough age, middle school age, is something that we could address more, and just to make sure that young adults feel that they're ready to become high schoolers. The other piece is I think that we need to be realistic. I agree with Mr. Osborne about athletics. It's an important thing, and I think participation, figuring out how to segue people from elementary school towards feeling like they could participate in athletics as high school. It's a small proportion of the student body that actually becomes athletes, and I think student athletes, do well further on in life. So I think that would be a great thing to participate more in.
Thank you. Mela.
I think that the greatest challenge that our school system has been struggling with is a confidence in actually our school system, in our administration, and in our safety measures that have been going through. I mean, of course, there is the masks, and there are also the pods that students are in, so they have 2 to 3 students, and they go from class to class. So you have less possible contamination of COVID. And I think that one of the jobs of a school board member is actually to bolster the community and educate the community on the steps that we have, that we are doing in our school system, and to really start building back that confidence that we have a safe, we have a local, we have a safe and a ability to, due to our smaller enrollment numbers, to really track what is going on within our school system. And I also think that one of the biggest challenges that our school system has is that we have this constant reaction of what's happening, and a lot of parents are looking for consistency. So how we get to there is really the struggle, but it's something that I think that if we come together and the parents start telling us exactly, I hope parents come to me and give me suggestions on how to do this, and also just the willingness to work with each other to create a consistent educational practice, as well as building the confidence in our school system.
Thank you. Thank you. Rod, I believe you're next to start.
Just don't forget Rachel.
I want to ask a question about, I know this sounds boring, output. That is to say, what is the purpose or the goal of the Rappahannock High School? And by that I mean, clearly it is to educate children. To what extent is it to have those children graduate and either go on to college at some level or sort, or in a job training, or in the military, or whatever? The last class of graduates was approximately 54, and about 54 or 5% of them went on to college, and then 4% went on to military and, well, it's the jobs, and others didn't sort of go on to anywhere, as far as I could tell. Are those numbers that you think the board should be saying, well, we're doing X and we should be getting it up, more going to college, or is that not really a goal? Is it more helping people get in the workforce place that we have a lot of job openings here? What's the end goal here, other than just getting a kid to, quote, graduate?
Well, I think the end goal should be like what most parents would hope for their own children, and that is to prepare the kids for a better future. Not all children who exit high school are ready for college. Some of them are ready for the workforce. Some of them are working farms in this community. And some of them go to the trade schools. I'm very grateful for the fact that this high school helped lay the foundation for my daughter. And it was very instrumental in preparing her for what was next, but that's not always the case. I think this school in particular does a very good job of giving them a well-rounded choice of activities and curriculum to delve into, whether it be the performing arts, band, and it's pretty impressive to see such a small group of kids participate in some of these activities and excel. I know the graduating class of my daughter's group, well, there was a number of children, daughter included, that was accepted at UVA and a lot of other well-known colleges in the area. But ultimately, I think the goal of a high school should be to prepare the kids for what comes next. And it's different for each and every one of them. It depends on their aptitude, it depends on their goals, and it depends on what's going on in their family. No two families are the same. Ultimately, you just want independent, solid citizens who enter into the society. Sadly, a lot of the children who exit school can't afford to, I think it was mentioned earlier, have housing in the county in which they've grown up in, and that's an entirely different subject. But just preparing them as best they can mentally and give them the skill source and the skill set to succeed at whatever they endeavor to do once they retire. And that's ultimately the goal for a parent and should be for the school itself.
Thank
2
you.
minutes on the dot.
Rachel?
Yeah, we have a really excellent new guidelines for what's called the profile of a Virginia graduate, and it's this great little Venn diagram that I love. We talk about, actually the group that's going to be graduating in their senior year. They're juniors now, they'll be seniors next year, will be the first to be within this profile of a graduate. It's allowed, it comes from the Department of Education, and it means there are 4 different parts on this diagram. There's content knowledge, just the stuff you should know. There's workplace skills, and we're very strong in that. You can take welding, you can take a lot of different, you can be ready to go and be a nurse or be a home health aide just directly from, you could be now with the Ag Academy, you could work in a veterinary office even. We have, the other piece is community and civic responsibility, and right now, we've started having beginning of the day seminar classes that are trying to get people thinking about, as an adult, what do you need to know, what do you need to do? That's an important piece of it, and we're working towards that. And then career planning is another big piece, career or college planning. And with this profile of a graduate team we have at school now, they've done 2 college visit trips already with juniors and seniors. I think that we need to look at being finished with high school as being a well-rounded experience where you think about yourself and your place in the community. You think about what your interests are, you have some knowledge, and you also have some skills with which to enter adulthood or the next phase of your life.
Right. So what I believe the goal is of Rappahannock County High School is to help our children reach their full potential. And that means whatever it means for that individual. I was so excited when I actually read the newspaper article on Mr. Seward, our new high school principal, because he emphasized on the fact that we are not just focused on enrollment, we are also focused on employment and enlistment as well. So what this means to me is that we are focused on success for our students, and that success means that they are successful in family, business, and life in general. This creates a prosperous life, and it's one that I am absolutely behind. And I really think that the emphasis in high school is to create critical thinkers. People who receive information, our children who receive information, and they can look at that information and think for themselves. One of the biggest trends of society is to just kind of go along, and I think that actually going and being able to go, oh, okay, well, this is right for my situation, and this is right for theirs, and that is okay, and I accept that you feel that way. I can respect you as long as you can please respect me. So, and I think that that is something that our high school is definitely striving towards. It has been working towards that for quite a while, as you can see in our core curriculum pamphlets. And I'm just excited to continue that work. Thank you.
Young people.
Larry, let me just do something. After Larry, we're going to go into Q&A. And then after the Q&A, they will each get 2 minutes to sum up. But I think we'll do that after the Q&A, if that's okay. So those of you that might want to ask questions, come on down and line up here. Pardon? 3 at a time. Yeah, I was about to say that. 3 at a time. No more than 3 at a time. So whoever wants to start, come on down. Larry, sorry to interrupt you, but.
Sure. Yeah. Young people on graduation, there's a core belief that I have is that young people, when they graduate from high school, they need to be competent. They need to have a plan. They need to be able to work that plan out, whatever it be, through an apprenticeship, college, what their future looks like. And I think that's part of the school's responsibility and the parents' responsibility to continue to talk about working that plan, having that plan, knowing which way they want to go. Their self-awareness, they need to be prepared for the world. And that's hard to do in a little county like Rappahannock, but there's some kids that probably need to experience what the world's all about. And I think the high school has a good vehicle for that experience. I think they also have to have a desire to continue to learn. We never stop. We shouldn't stop, but we have to continue to tell kids that learning is an ongoing process.
Thank you. Thank you all. Do we have anybody who wants to ask a question? We must. Right behind you, Tom, first. You go second. Gentleman that you are.
Hi,
If you would identify yourself. for
Yes,
me.
hi, my name is Mary Sherman Willis, and I live in Woodville. So I got this nice letter from Rod Osborne, and my question is to him. He says, I was reading along, and it says, we want to have a place free from agenda-driven curricula like critical race theory. And as anyone knows, critical race theory is specifically studied in law schools and universities and not in elementary schools or high schools. So I wonder if Mr. Osborne knows what it is.
I do know what it is. Critical race theory is invading some of the school jurisdictions around us. And they may call it by a different name, but it's a horse of a different color is still what it is. And critical race theory was developed in the 1970s, and it is just that, a theory, not based on fact, and it has no place in our school system for children. It was designed for law students, not in a university, not for K through 12. It is in school systems around us, and I would encourage you to look up at the Loudon budget. They actually have a budget for that curricula in their budget. And it is one of the reasons why I'm running. When I said you don't have to look far to see some of the progressive policies that are invading some of our schools, that's at the base of it. And it has no place in our school system. We don't need to teach children that because they're a particular color, they're inherently racist. Or we don't have to teach children that because they're a particular color, that the system is rigged against them. And it creates a division, and it creates a bad example for our children. And yes, it does exist. I know what critical race theory is, and it has no place in our schools.
Tom?
Thank you. My question also would be with you, sir, Mr. Osborne. My name is Tom Pelican. I also live in the great village of Woodville, the home of Larry Grove and many others. I do encourage everybody who here in the audience right now to read the biographies and the backgrounds of the people that are running for this office. I think the credentials of each are outstanding. I think they have to be compared to find out who is qualified to be a member of the school board. Homophobia, the irrational hatred and fear of homosexuals or homosexuality. Now, Mr. Osborne, you've been identified as being a homophobic individual. Your voice has been heard wide and clear by the people here. I'm a gay guy. People don't know that. I don't announce anything. I'm so popular in this county, I don't have to tell them. They can figure out themselves about me. But this county has a lot of people who are sympathetic to the feelings of others. And I'm just so afraid with your views, entering the Board of Supervisors, laying on the ground work that you expect with your homophobic background. I don't know how you handled it, and I'm being expressively trying to be this as much as I can. It is a bad argument. It's an argument that needs to be made. The public needs to know how you feel before you sit behind that board and make decisions about their children. Thank you.
Is that a question? I'm not-
That is a question.
Okay.
Well, it can be.
It was a long prelude for sure, but
Yes,
it is a question.
Would you like to answer a question?
Well,
Are you
if it's
homophobic?
posed as a
Are you
question, absolutely.
homophobic?
I am not homophobic, no.
No, you're not.
No, sir, I'm not.
Have you ever said any homophobic
I
statements
think it's been documented.
that you have?
Yes, if you read the article a couple
That
of
was
weeks
my,
ago,
that
then you
was my
know.
only question. Thank you.
Oh, okay. How many questions are we going to get? But let me go ahead and address that. Apparently, it's no secret that a couple of weeks ago, the Rappahannock News aired a story about some homophobic statements that I made during a Facebook post. I was invited to a Facebook group called Rappahannock Uncensored a year ago. It didn't take long for me to realize that this was a Facebook page not for community, but for political debate and satire. I engaged in a heated discussion with an individual on that page. This time last year, it was a contested election cycle. The gentleman in that exchange continued to refer to me as sweetheart and sweetie. I responded with a homophobic slur. Regrettably so, but it's not part of who I am. That being said, yes, sir, I don't think there's anybody in this audience who can say that in the heat of an argument that they haven't said something that is out of their character or that they regret. I'm not looking backward, I'm looking forward. And I don't think it's going to affect my ability to represent everybody in my district. I'm not going to sit here and parade the names of friends and family members who I have that are part of the LGBT community. They know my true character. I didn't know you were gay until you told me, and you didn't know me until just 2 minutes ago.
All right, I think we're maxing out here a little bit.
Okay, well,
All right, go ahead and finish, Ron. I don't
Okay.
think we need a debate.
all right. But in any case, that is behind me, and I'm looking forward. And it's not something that I'm going to allow to affect my ability to serve on the school board, not the Board of Supervisors, as you've asked. But that's all I have to say about that.
All right. Hello, everybody. Let's move to a different topic. I wondered if everybody could give a brief answer to my question because it's not really directed at any one person. I live in Castleton, by the way, Janet Davis. You mentioned budgeting earlier, and honestly, I've been to more school board meetings over the years and Board of Supervisor meetings and joint meetings where we really talk about and hash out and maybe argue about budget, because that's a big deal. And as we have changing numbers of students, I don't want the school to suffer. And you're right, I've written letters to former governors trying to get our LCI, get, cost of living COLA increases for LCI and all this, to offset our LCI and all that. So I'm just curious, we've got 2 serving members and 2 people vying to be new members of the school board. What's our best option going forward? Is it to eliminate certain programs, sports, or is it to reduce the amount of money that we have, which makes them maybe suffer because we have less money going into it? Is it to ask our community to step up and volunteer more? Because I think Rappahannock has done a great job of that. Reading after school programs. So anyway, I'm just curious, what's the best way to go forward as we have less students and we have tighter budgets?
We are short on time, but can each of you do is there a quick answer to that question?
I can start and try to keep it as brief as I can.
Yeah.
I can tell you I've met a lot of people on my walks who, some believe we spend a little bit too much on the school system, and some think we don't spend enough. And depending on whether or not you have children in the school might determine how you feel about that. I can tell you that with a budget of $13.5 million, the school budget, there's a lot of line items in there. And it could be anywhere from bus maintenance to replacement of HVAC. It's not all faculty. And one of the things I've said in my walks is that I believe that we owe the taxpayers, we're supposed to be good stewards with the taxpayers' money. So there needs to be accountability there. That being said, I think it would be a little rash to start cutting programs like faculty or athletics or anything until we can see what the trends are going to be moving forward. Mm-hmm. It's hard to, once you cut them out, it's hard to get them back. That's as brief as I can be.
Can,
Anybody else want?
I can do it quicker.
real quickie, I'm sorry, but we want time for you to have your 2-minute finale.
In reality, our budget is about $8,100 from local funds per kid. That's the lowest per pupil cost of any county around us, with the exception of Page. And I think we do a phenomenal job of prioritizing our needs and working to create educational programs that are within our budget. As I said earlier, we have given back to the county over almost $440,000 of budget money that we did not use from year to year over the past 7 years.
Cool. Well,
I would just like to make you aware of this initiative that we actually do have. It's called SIFT. It's a School Innovative Finance Task Force, and they are diving into how we can really start looking at that, looking at the
Who is
fact-
that? Who started that? Is that a school board thing?
So it says it's founded by the county administrator and school superintendent of Rappahannock County.
Okay.
And there are different task forces. I believe Shannon posted it about a year ago, and I'm trying to find another post so I can make it public knowledge to really start. People can volunteer and actually join these task forces to lay their questions.
Thank you. Rachel?
I think that one place we could look is just where we'd look at our homes. We could save money. We could save money if we were to install solar on our schools. A lot of schools are doing that. We could save $80,000 a year if we just covered the roof of all the schools with solar panels. We could find grants and funding for this. This is a very supportive community. That's one thing. That's one way that we save money at our farm, and I'm sure that we could do it at the school too. And that's a way that a lot of schools are going. We also could increase our enrollment. I mean, there are some sensitive things about this, but I do think that a way to increase enrollment is to be truly welcoming. I don't think that having a school board member who has openly expressed homophobic views, as Mr. Osborne has, would be a very welcoming signal to give to people moving from other places into our community. And I just really think that's important. We have anti-discrimination clauses on our books, and we need to have people who will actually honor and believe in them.
Okay,
Thank you.
I think
Thanks,
we've
Ralphie.
gone beyond that question. Well, first of all, thank you for the questions. We're now going to give each of you the chance for a finale. I'm sorry, we're really short on time. I apologize, but each of you gets a 2-minute finale. Here's why I should get the job. Hire me. We're going to start with Rod and work our way down this way.
Well, thank you, Mr. Sullivan, for moderating this forum. I truly appreciate the opportunity given to all of us tonight. I appreciate those who helped facilitate this. I appreciate the audience here, and I also appreciate those who might be live streaming us. You couldn't have asked for a more diverse group of candidates, and hopefully by the end of this evening, whether it be for the school board or the BOS, you've heard something from a candidate that might align with the way you believe and that you would get behind. I want to say we have a current administration that has asked the DOJ to instruct the FBI to investigate parents who speak out at school boards, and they've all been labeled terrorists. We have a candidate for governor who has said that the parents don't have any rights to be involved in their students, their children's curriculum and what's going on in their schools. And we have school boards across the region, and some not too far over this mountain range, who've lost their way and forgot who they serve. I want the same opportunities my daughter had to have an outstanding education here at Rappahannock to be in place for future students to come. I believe that the parents need to get more involved. I think they should, and I would encourage them to do so. I would welcome them, once I'm on the board, to either meet with me privately or come to the school board meetings and share what they think, to get more involved. We serve the children. If you haven't seen the salary for a school board member, then you know I'm not up here for the money. Not up here for any prestige or recognition. I certainly haven't enjoyed any of the attention. I'm here for the 760 people who can't even vote for me. I'm here for the children. And I'm running because I care. I simply, truly care. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Larry?
As I stated at the beginning, I bring common sense and experience to the school board. I care about our school system, I care about our county, and I care about our families. And I agree with Rod that families have to be involved in their child's education. I always conduct myself in a civil manner, modeling what I want our kids to see as they grow up. I consider this election a hiring process. I've hired many, many people, and I count you as the employer and me as the applicant. I have always tried to employ the applicant with the best qualifications. Thank you.
Thank you. You're next.
All right. I just want to leave it with this. I have a great hope for Rappahannock. Ever since the pandemic started, I really started diving into the community, and that has given me a great passion for what Rappahannock has to offer. And I believe that the best way for us to go about bringing about the best in Rappahannock is with our education system and allowing people to not be discriminated against, to be able to decide for themselves exactly what is best for them. And my hope is that we can do that in such a respectful manner that really focuses on building the community as a whole. As I've already stated, we have an amazing administration in Rappahannock County Public School, and I just really want to help them move forward together as a team. That's it.
Thank you.
Hi.
Rachel, you're last.
Oh, good. I'm glad. So I believe in Rappahannock County schools, and I'll do everything I can to promote a safe, fun, and inspiring learning environment at Rappahannock County Public Schools. You can tell by my record as a community member and as a school board member that I am a diligent and hard worker, and I am committed to this community. I think that there was an oblique reference to the masking argument. So to me, that argument boils down to a common interest. We want the pandemic to end, and we want things to be back to normal again. We all want that. The best way to make it happen is to simply just help each other and ourselves by wearing masks indoors, getting vaccinated if we can, and following public health guidelines. Currently, right now, our school's COVID dashboard shows 50 people who are sick or quarantined and are missing school. Their absence is lost time learning and taking part in activities. The effect of COVID in our schools radiates into our community. None of you are going to school, but this affects you. We risk exposure for everyone, especially the most vulnerable, which can prolong the pandemic. We have had recent loss of life due to COVID in our school community. Our SRO, our late SRO, died of COVID. During the past 3 months, concerned friends and kind strangers have asked me if I even feel like being on the school board anymore. When I started on the board, it was a low-key, behind-the-scenes type of job that rarely made headlines, and the past 3 months have been more consuming than I had ever thought that this position would be. These are politically charged and challenging times, and it can be hard to see a way forward. The answer for me is an easy one. Just look at the kids. They're wonderful and enthusiastic and talented and excited about life, and they're amazingly resilient. And they're learning all the time from being in the world, from being at school, from each other, and from the adults around them. They reflect back what we give them, and working for them is worth it in every way.
Great, thank you. Thank you all. How about a great round? Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Ron.
So, you know, I only went 2 minutes over after we started 7
I
minutes
know,
late.
you
I
did good.
did pretty
Late. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take just a moment to get the stage cleaned, and then we'll get the candidates up here. So you have about 2 minutes. You're not sitting down yet. Oh, I don't know. Where are you? You're fourth. You're right there. Third, rather. Absolutely. And that water right there. Okay. Okay, just scoot that over for a second. That's a fresh one. Hello, can everyone please take their seat now? We'd like to get started. We are on a very tight schedule tonight. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to start the next section of the program tonight, which is the Board of Supervisor candidates. Thank you all for being wonderful, an audience, a great audience. You were very kind to the candidates, and I know it relieved some of their stress, so thank you, and we'll proceed with that. It is now my honor to introduce our Board of Supervisor candidates, Christine Smith, incumbent Piedmont District, and her opponent, Cliff Miller. David Connick and Van Carney. These two gentlemen are running for the Stonewall Hawthorne District position that is being vacated by Chris Parrish. Please have a seat. Thank you. How about a welcome? Candidates, I'd like to just take a moment to remind you to please watch your time. Melissa will be seated at that table there. We are very tight on time, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions from the audience for you all. So thank you. Our moderator for the school board candidate is Mr. Tim Carrington. Mr. Carrington has worked in journalism and economic development, writing for the Wall Street Journal for 15 years, from New York, London, and Washington. He subsequently joined the World Bank, where he launched a training program in economics journalism for reporters and editors in Africa and the former Soviet Union. Mr. Carrington later served as Senior Communications Officer for the World Bank's Africa region. He is the author of The Year They Sold Wall Street, published by Houghton Mifflin, and also worked at McGraw-Hill Publications. His writing on development issues has appeared in The Globist, World Paper, Enterprise Africa, and the 2003 book, The Right to Tell, The Role of Mass Media in Economic Development. Mr. Carrington grew up in Richmond, Virginia, and graduated from the University of Virginia. He and his wife, Meryl, split their time between Washington, D.C. and Washington, Virginia. He is a regular writer for the Rappahannock News through a partnership established with Foothills Forum. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Carrington. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rappahannock voters, for coming this evening. And for those tuning in remotely, thank you for joining us by screen. Thank you especially to Mr. Carney, Mr. Connick, Mr. Miller, and Ms. Smith. Thank you for coming and for sharing your thoughts and your visions for the county. We're grateful to the Rappahannock News and businesses of Rappahannock for organizing this forum, and we extend particular thanks to Teresa Wood and Dennis Brack. I now invite the audience to give these four candidates an enthusiastic round of applause. It's a terrific thing that people want to run for public office and that they work as hard as they do to succeed in that. And it's with real gratitude that we receive them and look to hear from them tonight. Candidates, each of you have loyal, even unshakable supporters who are unlikely to swerve no matter what they hear this evening. And while we welcome those loyal backers, we feel a special responsibility to make this evening valuable to another group of voters, those who are still undecided, who are still scratching their heads, looking to learn something more. Perhaps they want you to go beyond what you've already said, to explain something in greater detail, to address some worries they've got about the election. So thank you for keeping these voters in mind this evening. Following your opening statements, each of which will run 2 minutes, I'll pose 4 questions to all 4 of you, and you'll each have 2 minutes to respond. We're going to try to be a little more aggressive than we were last time about running over. So Melissa will signal to me, I'll do this, and then maybe wave my hands, meaning please wrap it up. So that we leave time for the next questions. I will have a different order for each question so that no one is always the last person to speak or the first person to speak. We will have then questions. After the broad questions I'm asking all of you, I will have a question for each one of you individually. So that will be a slight change from what we saw with the school board. Following that, we'll have questions from the audience the same way. Please line up at the microphone. There'll be 3 of you at a time if people are backing up like that. You'll respond, and then there'll be the opportunity for closing statements from you. So, with the ground rules established, we'll get going with the first questions.
Maybe do our introductory statement.
I'm sorry, I did exactly what John Sullivan did, didn't I?
He set you up.
We're so eager to get to this first question. The first question is, will you please give us your statements, your opening statements about your candidacy? Starting with you, Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Carrington, and thank you for the organizers of tonight's event, and thank you all for coming out this evening. My name is Christine Smith, and for the past 4 years, I have had the honor of serving the Piedmont District on the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors. I was elected to the board originally in 2017, and as the only incumbent on this panel this evening, I'm running on my record, which is strong, and I am proud of it. I would like to say, first off, I'm very proud of the financial choices I have made as a member of the Board of Supervisors. Not long before I was elected to the board, the county was in a borrowing situation. We had a negative fund balance. We were borrowing just to pay our bills. I have worked hard to keep this county on track, to have budgets that have buy-in from all parties involved and that are still responsible and accountable budgets. I have worked hard to focus on critical, essential county business so we can get things done. When I was elected to the board, we were 24 sets of meeting minutes behind. That's almost 2 years of meeting minutes. Our comprehensive plan was more than 10 years out of date. Our ordinances all needed updating. Since I've been on the board, I made sure that we focused on those critical, essential tasks, and we caught up on our meeting minutes. We stay caught up on our meeting minutes. We updated and reviewed and adopted a revised comprehensive plan. We have done much of the ordinance work, and the ordinance work continues. And by concentrating on these essential things as a county, we will continue to be successful and to set ourselves up for the future in a positive way. Specific to Piedmont District, I have been responsive and delivered to the voters of my district as a representative on the Board of Supervisors. I made sure the cell tower application went through for serves Sperryville, and also the Scrabble Tower, which will provide service down 522. I've supported recent expenditures to the Water and Sewer Authority for ARPA funding. through ARPA funding so that we can invest in the infrastructure of the Water and Sewer Authority. And I will continue to work with the other members of the board and VDOT representatives to address safety and traffic concerns throughout the village, down 522 and 211 and 231. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Over to you, Cliff Miller.
Thank you, Teresa and Tim and Business of Rappahannock and all the audience members out here. This commitment to creating a dialogue here is crucially important in our community, and I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to talking to you about many things this evening, but I've looked pretty hard at the issues in this county, and I'd like to start with one. Out of 134 counties in the state of Virginia, Rappahannock's population is the 8th oldest. Of the workforce that we have, a majority of them leaves to work elsewhere. And there's a belief that keeping things exactly the same in this county is the path forward. And if you believe this, I beg you, go down to your local fire station or your EMS provider, talk to your school administrators and ask them, how hard is it to find teachers? How hard is it to find firefighters and rescue squad drivers right now? The people at the core of making this a community we all want to live in are being driven out. It's a complex issue, and the solutions need to come from a collaborative effort of citizens and government. We need board members that can work with the public and each other to find consensus and solve problems. I talked to a firefighter in Sperryville last week, and he said, you got a bucket and it's got a lot of holes in it and more every year. And he said, one of these days it's going to run out of water. And then I talked to an EMS driver about a week later, and he said, promise me if you get elected, you'll be able to make a decision. Strong words. I'd like to get started making these decisions and plugging the holes in that bucket. Let's make Rappahannock a place where young families and young working professionals can live and work. Thank you.
Thank you. David Connick.
Thank you. I want to thank the audience. I want to thank the organizers for putting this together. I first came to Rappahannock County and made it my home when I was 25 years old, some 46 years ago. I built my own house. I started my law practice, and I raised my family here. One way or another, I've been involved in county government and various local civic groups for most of that time. I hope to bring to the Board of Supervisors a unique skill set that will help the board establish priorities and focus on getting results. The main priorities that I see and have laid out in my campaign are first, how best to manage our emergency services, and the issue of volunteers versus paid services, implementation of the 2020 strategic plan. It's literally a life and death issue if you need those services. And if we don't make prudent decisions, it could be very costly if we make mistakes. Infrastructure issues is the second priority, and that includes the renovation of the courthouse, construction of new county office buildings, water and sewer, and broadband. My background and experience is directly relevant to all of these challenges and will allow me to contribute to the timely resolution of these challenges in a responsible and timely manner, and to keep the costs within due bounds. Everybody knows my background on zoning and land use issues. That's my specialty. Our current zoning and subdivision ordinance are 35 years out of date. As planning chairman, I work with my colleagues to get the new comp plan adopted, and now it's time to implement the goals and policies that are laid out in it to make sure that this unique place stays the way we want it to. I look forward to tonight's discussion of these and other issues with my fellow candidates, and thank you all again for your attention and for being here tonight.
Thank you. And Carney.
Hello and good evening. Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Melissa, for doing the clock. My name is Van Carney, and I grew up in Woodville on my grandparents' farm alongside the Thornton River, and I currently live in Woodville with my wife and my 3 boys. I own Penn Druid Farm Winery and Farm Brewery with my 2 brothers. Before the Lane family sold Eldon, they built us a new building, and they gave us a long-term lease because they believed in us. and they wanted to see us succeed. And they knew that we would carry on in their tradition of stewardship and conservation of the land through farming, and we do. So to the Lane family, we owe a great deal of gratitude. My first business in Rappahannock here was catching frogs in the Thornton River and selling them to tourists. I suppose I still do the same thing now. And a tourist asked me one time, said, "Aren't you a little young to be doing this?" And I said, "Don't worry, the frogs don't care." But beginning with my Eagle Scout at the Rappahannock County Park, I've always wanted to give back, whether it's on the board of the Benevolent Fund or starting the farmers market or creating a family-friendly community space up at the brewery. I believe that community thrives when it gives back. My vision of Rappahannock includes all types of people. It preserves the landscape while navigating the complexities of land use and getting more kids into the public schools and helping to strengthen our volunteer fire and rescue and helping families to stay, live, and work here. And it all starts with affordable, reliable broadband. At 133 counties in this great Commonwealth, there's not a single one that's like Rappahannock, and we all in this room know that. And I intend to keep it that way. And our willingness to be different in its beauty, in its ruralness, and its openness. I value honesty, hard work, humor, and a willingness to work with other people that don't think the same way that I do. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I think we get to a question that it turns out all of you are already thinking about. And that is the question of growth, meaning more people and more businesses. The threat or the opportunity for growth is a matter of intense reaction in the county and is certain to be a source of strenuous debate for the next Board of Supervisors, as development proposals for Sperryville and Washington demonstrated during the past year. While growth is a present source of anxiety, Rappahannock actually was its most populous 170 years ago, with 9,782 residents. Its biggest growth spurt came 5 decades ago in the 1970s, when the population shot up 17%. None of you wants Rappahannock County to become the next Haymarket, and you wouldn't be elected if you did want that. But when it comes to more people and more businesses, what do you want? Another 200 landowning, tax-paying citizens, 20 more businesses? I concede that it's hard to say without specific proposals in front of you, but unless you're opposed to all housing growth or all new business ideas, I invite you now to tell voters what sort of plans you might find acceptable, even beneficial. So we're going to start with Mr. Miller, with Cliff Miller, who has already started to address some of those concerns, but I think this might be a chance, Cliff, to go into a few more details.
Thanks, Tim. I focused on this on my opening statement because it's what I have heard over and over again. There's a current trend happening in this county, and it's I think an irreversible trend, and that is that there's a limited supply of real estate and there's huge demand because people have discovered it's a wonderful place to live. But the result of that has been that the people that we depend on to run all of our essential services, our teachers, our firefighters, EMS, our police force, we're asking them to commute from outside the county to do a job here that, you know, frankly, a lot of times doesn't pay as well as some other places do, and they can't live here. And it's like I said, it's a complex issue. It's a multi-pronged issue. There's a lot of derelict structures in the county that can be rehabilitated. It's going to take a concerted effort between government and the citizenship to do those types of things. But I believe that's the segment of the population that we need to focus on. And as far as new business here, if you look at our tax base, it's almost entirely property tax. I would welcome some new business to take up some of that slack, because that number is going to keep getting bigger, and I'd like to see our taxes stay low.
Thank you. David, growth, more housing, more business. How's it look to you?
Well, As a former chairman of the Planning Commission, I have to say that I think your question, in a way, puts the cart before the horse, because we live in a Dillon rule state, where the county only has certain authority and jurisdiction that is granted to it by the state. And one of those things we have to do is a comprehensive plan, and one is the zoning ordinance. It's great to talk about all these things, what we'd like to see. We'd like to see more young people. We'd like to see more business and so forth. But the county government really cannot be responsible, can't dictate to people what they have to do with their property, or what kind of houses they have to build and who should live in them, or what businesses should come here. Our role is simply to facilitate that growth by eliminating whatever barriers there might be, and to make sure that whatever change and whatever growth does come in doesn't adversely affect the people who live here and the people who have a direct interest and came here because this is the place they want to live and the type of place they want to live. So we have to be mindful of those things in creating the comp plan and implementing it through the zoning ordinance. As far as the emergency and fire type of things and the tax base is primarily, I think, about $12 million of our total tax revenue comes from real estate taxes. And that's really not going to change. We don't have a tax on businesses. There's a sales tax. We get several $100,000 from that. And we have a meals and lodging tax. But the kind of growth that you're talking about in all the neighboring jurisdictions, that's always been sort of the rationale and the justification for growth, that it will somehow bring in more revenue. But in fact, it creates more demand for services, and it winds up raising taxes.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Carney.
So let's be clear. We all probably agree that none of us want to see Rappahannock get chopped up. Islands have physical barriers, and you can only fit so many houses on an island, for instance. What we've created here in Rappahannock is incredible. And it has a kind of island-type mentality in that sense. We have low housing density, and so it presents some challenges. But I am sitting here to tell you today that my brothers and I have overcome that. We grew up here. We started a business here. We live here. This is my home. And I firmly believe that what we need for health and safety for our educators and our teachers, which is fast, affordable, reliable broadband, is going to bring more families into our county. We have a subdivision clause in our ordinance that allows for family subdivisions. Our county, by right now, could have 2.5, 3 times as many houses as we currently do. And if you took an aerial photograph of Rappahannock from 1986 into 2070, you'd see houses slowly being built. And that's by right. You will see more families here, and you will see more kids in the schools. You'll see more people working from home. That's a trend. It's a national trend. And it's something that we can take advantage of while we protect our open spaces. It's something I believe we can do. It's in our grasp. Let's just think about this for a second. Humans created mechanized flight in 1903. 1969, we're on the moon. 66 years. Humanity can do a lot. We can protect this place, and we can make it a little bit better for the folks that live here.
Great. Thank you very much. Ms. Smith.
Thank you. I did want to make a few different comments about growth. As I mentioned, we did adopt the revised comprehensive plan at the end of 2020, and it was always my plan to start an economic revitalization review with lots of public input and ideas for our future and visions for our future once the comprehensive plan was complete. 2020 was not the year to start having large meetings for lots of public input, lots of people gathering together, getting all of that critical information, and everything, let's face it, is not normal. It is not a good year to try to chart a path forward. But I do think a day is coming where we have the comprehensive plan completed, we have our ordinance work coming through, and once the pandemic has wound down, we need to take a look forward and say, what are the areas that do make sense for us to possibly have some growth in and get lots and lots of public input about anything that we may decide to do. I should mention that I think it is critical for the local government to provide a sound and smart background for business and growth to take place in. And I have certainly done that in my time on the board. And for the last 3 years, we've had no tax increases for the county. And that is certainly something that people look at when they decide where they want to live. I was in favor, and I was the board member who brought forward the idea of expanding the family division section of our local ordinance so that we can encourage folks to move back to the county and families to live together in a multi-generational way on the land. So young people can move back and older generations can age in place. And I think that's a great solution. We also expanded the family apartment to be an accessory apartment. So now anyone can live in that apartment. You don't have to be related to the person that you're helping. Broadband will certainly play a role as people can begin to live in areas of the county that they may never have been able to anticipate living in before.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you'll have more opportunity on the next question to expand a little on that last thought, because that question does address the broadband question. And it's, of course, become much more pressing and much more interesting in a way in the last year. Much more pressing because we saw school kids parked in hotspots, sitting in the back seats of cars, trying to do their classwork on screens because they didn't have good broadband connection at home. And we also saw some remote working adults who were stymied by interrupted and uncertain service. So while some citizens say they could take or leave broadband, others are seriously worried about the consequences of moving too slow in this area. So what I'd like to ask you for now is, what in your mind would be the downside risk of Rappahannock accepting a long-term identity of being a locality with spotty, unreliable broadband access? And we'll start with David Connick.
Well, I think you have to keep in mind that the law of unintended consequences, to react to the past year or two and the conditions we've had and assume that that's going to be what they call the new normal may not be so. If we have and implement a broadband across the board, one of the unintended consequences that we ought to be aware of is a lot more people are going to want to move to Rappahannock County because, like has been said, they can work at home, they can do a lot of the things, they're not going to have to commute to an office. And who wants to live in Arlington or Fairfax if you can live here and do your job from home? So I think that is part of the question that we have to address, and I really don't think it's adequately been discussed what the long-term consequences would be. I certainly think that having broadband and improved broadband service is very important, and to some businesses it's critically important. In my business, it's revolutionized the practice of law because I don't have to go to a law library. I can do a lot of things online that I couldn't do before. Other businesses, restaurants and so forth, you pay your bill by the internet. So it's important, but I think we have to proceed cautiously, and I think it's a very good thing, what has been done so far. I think we have to maintain a level playing field so that new technology is not discriminated against. And I also think that when you say, what is the downside risk? Well, the downside risk is we're not going to have as much growth and as much business that we might otherwise have. But my question is whether that's necessarily a bad thing and whether that kind of change is really something that the people of Rappahannock County want.
Thank you. Van, what is your sense of the downside of kind of being in the slow lane as far as broadband is concerned?
Well, I think that at this point, it's a basic question of health and safety. We have a failing telephone, whatever you want to call it, system in this county, but we have a lot of folks that just cannot get a reliable signal on their landline. We have, in this past year, I mean, I agree with Mr. Connick, this might be the first and last time tonight, but I do agree with him that this past year can't be a signifier of what the future is going to hold in terms of kids needing that kind of connectivity at home all the time. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be a trend. You can't even get a DMV appointment right now without getting on the internet. And I do think it's sort of a specious argument to think that broadband is going to bring more folks out here unnecessarily. I think that the same argument could have been made about paving the roads and electricity. If there's anybody in this room that wants to give up electricity, raise your hand right now. So I think it's pretty clear that as the world around us, and including every other locality around us, is doing this, it's an infrastructure thing. It's a utility. The internet has become a utility. People need it for various reasons. Downside, we get left behind and we lose this chunk of money this year. You know, in the state of Virginia right now, there's $700 million that's being pushed towards this instead of the usual, whatever it is, 50. And it's a good time to go for this. Both our state senator and our delegate have signaled to our chairman of the board, do this. This is a good idea. So the downside, all the stuff we deal with now, all the problems that we deal with now, we just wouldn't solve them.
Okay, thank you. Christine, is there a downside to being in the slow lane for broadband?
Well, I don't mean to find holes in the question, but I would just point out that Governor Northam has set a goal for universal broadband coverage by the end of 2028 for all of Virginia. So with that in mind, I really don't think we're going to get left in the slow lane. I don't think anyone's going to get left in the slow lane. The goal is universal broadband coverage. That is a state goal, the goal of the Commonwealth of Virginia, for which we have applied for a Virginia Telecommunications Initiative grant. There is also a federal program which is often overlooked, which is RDOF, which is the Rural Digital Opportunities Fund. And while a lot of the clamor lately has been for the action on VODI, the RDOF was something that required no local dollars for Rappahannock County. And we actually had folks that bid, companies that bid on that process, and were awarded $2.4 million to bring broadband service to Rappahannock County without any local taxpayer dollars involved. Those winners were Chantel for a large fixed wireless solution that would benefit greatly the people of Piedmont and Stonewall Hawthorne districts, and also Starlink. They were the big winner. They won about $1.7 million. And between those two winners in the RDOF auction, there are about 1,700 homes and businesses that will be supplied internet service as a result. Oftentimes, these efforts are compared to rural electrification, and I would just say if you're going to draw those parallels, the parallel to draw that with, that program truly is RDOF, because that is the federal program that requires no money from us. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
So Tim, we could have a long conversation about the implementation of internet in Rappahannock County, but if you believe as I do that internet has become a essential service these days, the question you asked, what's the downside? Well, the downside is you're denying your citizens an essential service. And I think it's a pretty easy answer. If you have the ability to give them that service, not giving it to them is a pretty big downside. There's this argument that if we bring in internet, everyone's going to flock to Rappahannock County. I heard the same argument when I built a golf course. I said, well, everybody's going to want to build a golf course. That was a pretty absurd argument. But My point is, I mean, do you keep your house a mess so the neighbors won't come over and have dinner with you? I don't buy that argument. I think we have a responsibility to the people who live here, and that is to provide them with an essential service if we have the ability to do it, and we have that now.
Great. Thank you.
Tim, I'd like to have my minute of rebuttal.
A minute.
Okay, thanks. I don't think it's a specious argument to say that we're going to get a lot of growth. I think that's something that we ought to talk about. And I've been an advocate for a long time that we need to have a public hearing like this and listen to what people say at a public hearing and also know what the options are and know what the cost is going to be. Because those are two, everybody wants better broadband, but the question is at what cost and how's it going to affect the tax base or the tax situation, and also is it economically viable? The grant covers the construction, but what about the operation and maintenance of the system? The second thing I want to address is this argument that, well, it's a necessary public utility, but it's not like other public utilities because it's not regulated. That's what I did for a lot of my career. Regulated public utilities, you can see how they make the rates, you can see what their costs are, and you can regulate them and make sure that there's a quality of service. And without public regulation, we have no opportunity to do that.
Thank you.
Could I have 1 minute,
If
please?
I may have a moment of rebuttal, please?
I think we've maxed out, as Mr. Sullivan said, and we're going to have further discussion and closing statements, and I want to move on to the next item, which does overlap with this, as do a couple of others. This is demographics, and several of you have touched on that. The Board of Supervisors isn't empowered to halt the passage of time or to require procreation, but it does respond to a changing demographic profile. Rappahannock is aging. Across the county line from Culpeper, and the median age leaps from 39 to 50. In Culpeper, 15% of the population is 65 and over. In Rappahannock, it's 1 out of 4 residents. School populations are shrinking, as has been noted in our previous discussion, which translates to less support from the state. In 1990, there were 1,597 residents between the ages of 25 and 39, the main years of forming families. By 2010, residents in this age group had plummeted to 980, a 61% drop. This is a two-part question. Are there any policies or promotions that might realistically affect the demographic profile of Rappahannock County, affect the aging trend that has been noted in so many studies of the county? And if not, how are the needs of an aging county different from those of a county with a younger profile? We start with Mr. Carney.
So, in terms of what I was sort of thinking before when I was mentioning that I felt that reliable and affordable broadband would help to start to bring in a demographic that Rappahannock used to see. And I have seen that. Listen, my brothers and I own a brewery outside of Sparrowview. You probably all know where it is. And I see a lot of people, and I talk to a lot of people. And I talk to a lot of folks that just buy houses here, and they're just trying to find out what to do. And I have to say that in the past 2-3 years, I have seen more younger families coming into this county and buying houses than I have seen in the past decade. And it's a trend that I think will be helped in terms of the demographic by bringing in broadband, because you'll be able to have folks that can work from home. In terms of the services that an aging generation will need, I hear it all the time being on the board of the Benevolent Fund. It's stuff we talk about. Rappahannock is rural, and it's difficult for seniors that don't have the resources to do some of the functions that they might need to do during the day. We don't have some of the things that folks in other municipalities would rely on. And so it is a challenge. We're lucky in the sense that, we're a community where our neighbors help each other, and we have organizations that do outreach and do help. But it is a challenge, I have to say.
Good, thank you. Next to Christine.
Thank you. I would just say that in terms of services for aging seniors, we have a great resource in Scrabble with our senior center, which is a county project. And of course, a lot of folks look forward to going there. And that's a wonderful social outlet for a lot of the older generation here in the county. I'm not really sure why we're skewing older. A lot of rural localities are experiencing this in Virginia. There's actually a trend called the graying of Virginia, and it's not something that we are alone in experiencing. We are looking at broadband and reviewing those options, and I just want to make clear how very critical I understand it is for children that are home and they're learning online, for working families that are telecommuting, and for folks that have health issues and they need to take advantage of telehealth options. And those are all three priorities that in 2020, when the Board of Supervisors started talking about taking broadband out of committee and getting it into the Broadband Authority, those are all three priorities that we knew topped the list for the people of Rappahannock County. Since my time on the board in 2019, I started looking at how other rural counties are accomplishing broadband. It's usually a hybrid system of fixed wireless to more remote areas and fiber to the home to more centralized locations. The latest body round of applications may expedite that for us, and we may be able to only explore the fiber to the home option, which would be wonderful because that is the gold standard for broadband. So 2019, I started experiencing all the options out there and researching them. 2020, we saw the need, immediate need. It got brought to the front burner that we must accomplish this. And I made sure my name's on those documents that took us out of committee and formed the Broadband Authority so we could get the money to flow and accomplish broadband goals for the people of Rappahannock County. Thank you.
Thank you. Cliff Miller.
Tim, I don't know if you've seen the logo for Rappahannock County, but it's got a cow and an apple on it. It's a wonderful logo. I like it a lot. There's not a whole lot of cows and there's less apple trees in the county. This was a farming community and the working age demographic farmed. That's becoming increasingly more difficult. And I think that our county government can step in there and help that younger generation find ways to get into agriculture in a profitable way. And I think it's going to take, like I've said before, a real effort between county officers, county government, and our local citizenship to find ways to preserve this open space, yet make a living at it. I think, one of the things I think about all the time is my next door neighbor provides the headmaster's pub with all of our beef for our hamburgers. He gets in his truck with a trailer, goes over 2 mountain ranges to Edinburgh, has the cows processed, and comes back to Sperryville. We could have a meat processing plant here. There are so many things that we could do if we got together with the citizenry and local government at the same time and put our heads together to do this. As far as services for the elderly, I think there's, again, being able to have reliable communications. I hear this over and over from the EMS and fire guys is critically important.
Good. Thank you. David Connick.
Thank you. Well, when it comes to demographics, I want to say that I'm keenly aware of the issues that you've raised because I was a director at Wakefield Country Day School for about 8 or 10 years. And the lack of young people in the county to attend the school was a real problem, much more severe than the public school, because unlike the public school, we only got the money from the students that we had, and we didn't have any rich uncle to go to and get money to keep the school afloat other than tuition most of the time. Again, I think some of these issues the county government is limited in what it can do, but there are some things that it can do to attract younger people and more families into the county. The first thing is to eliminate zoning barriers that we've got right now because our ordinances are so far out of date. For example, in the villages, for reasons that won't go into, we have a minimum lot size of 1 acre, whereas the town of Washington's, it's a half an acre. And if you look at Sperryville or Flint Hill, many of the lots that are there are way less than that. They're probably a quarter of an acre. So why is that in there? It needs to be looked at. It needs to be amended. The second thing is the family subdivision that Christine mentioned. This has an artificial restriction which was put in there years and years ago that if it's not a lot of record from 1966, you can't divide it. And I know of circumstances, people have a 50-acre lot, they can't cut off a 5-acre lot for their child, but right down the road, somebody's got a lot that's a 5-acre lot, and they gave their kid a 2-acre lot because it wasn't an existing lot in 1966. That has to be changed. Our zoning categories have to be looked at. Right now, everything that's not in some other category is in default. It goes into agriculture or conservation by default. So we need some more. We need more zones that will allow growth around the villages, and we need zoning maps for the villages to facilitate it. Last but not least, I'm happy to say we passed last year an ordinance change that allows meat processing of agricultural products, which until then was not allowed unless it was grown on site. And so that's been liberalized. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Could I have a minute for that?
A minute.
No? 1 minute?
1 minute. Yes.
I agree. I think that we need to have a comprehensive look at our villages, and I think we need to have a public discussion about that. The maps that were in the 2020 comp plan were done, I think, not with enough public input, and we need to get Team A to help us. And I think that when you need experts, let's not ask elected officials, but let's hire experts, just like we've done, just like the building committee has done, to tell us the condition of our buildings. They go in, give you a bill of health, and say, here's what you can do. We need to look at our villages and have comprehensive plans for them so that they don't sprawl, so that we can have vibrant little business centers. Everybody loves Rappahannock, and there are many eyes on Rappahannock. And I think it's the first step to help protect and enliven the villages.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Harrington, I would
So-
like a rebuttal time for that, please.
All right. I guess, Cliff, you're not going to have a rebuttal time on this question.
I
Okay.
just want to make it very clear that when we did take on the comprehensive plan work, I came on in 2018, and a lot of that had been done prior to my time on the board. And I just want to be very clear that I was all in favor of more community buy-in, facilitated meetings, community education opportunities, and everything we could do to get folks on board with the process of the comprehensive plan. And I would just say, I know that the maps didn't make the final cut. There was a lot of back and forth, though, with the Regional Commission and the Planning Commission. Government is a creative process. Not everything is going to come out in your final product. However, the maps that were drawn, I think, will serve as an excellent launch point for future discussions. And I look forward to having those discussions and to getting more community input in the future.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. The next and last question for all of you is related to something we've touched on, and I think this is a chance to dive a little deeper into it, and that is the business environment in Rappahannock County, what it's like to do business here compared to other places. Two of you manage businesses. Two of you view enterprises from a different vantage point of regulatory and legal perspective. So what is your present opinion of Rappahannock's environment for doing business, particularly or including businesses related to tourism and hospitality? Is there anything about the present environment for doing business that you would want to change if you could convince your Board of Supervisors colleagues to join you? And we'll start with our one incumbent, Ms. Smith.
Well, thank you, Tim. And I think I've mentioned previously that I think getting more public input on economic revitalization opportunities is key. We did have a former economic revitalization study, but I believe that's more than 10 years old. And I think that's an entirely appropriate first step. as we take a look at what our options are for the future. I do want to talk about my experience and my record supporting businesses, local businesses, which is excellent. Sales tax revenue since I've been elected has doubled from $40,000, to $80,000. Meals and lodging per quarter has risen from $70,000 to $120,000 per quarter. It's nearly doubled. I worked in particular in the pandemic to meet the needs of small businesses with the CARES Act money that we received as a county. And we allocated over $150,000 to help local businesses especially. Of that, about $30,000 was earmarked to go to nonprofits and educational organizations. And I worked with the businesses of Rappahannock and our local regional commission and others in that effort. In terms of tourism, I support the businesses that we have now. I do think there is a place, a sweet spot, where tourism can excel, but there isn't so much tourism that it starts to negatively impact our quality of life. And I think we all feel that in our guts. We all know it's true. That we don't want to lose our charm as a county and sacrifice what we bring to the table for tourism by building more than we should. I do want to mention that this past budget cycle, we did something I've been wanting to work on for years, which is we increased our tourism percentage, our lodging tax so this is paid by folks that are passing through the county to stay overnight, from 2% to 4%. And we expect to realize an additional $40,000 in revenue from that annually, which will pay for all of our tourist initiatives that we currently have, the visitor center, the historic trails, and more.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Cliff Miller, what, if anything, would you want to change in the present business environment?
I'd love to have some more employees. It's very hard to find employees right now. That's a combination of factors, but that is not really the county government's top priority. I would say that my one frustration has been that the application process is very difficult in Rappahannock, and I think it has probably discouraged a lot of young entrepreneurs. There's room for improvement across the board. I think it starts with the county officers who don't have a clear roadmap to give applicants when they want to bring a business to Rappahannock, and then it moves on to both the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. It's an inefficient process at best, and I think there's a whole lot of room for improvement there. I want to talk a second about tourism because I think we live next to the park. Tourism is here. These people are passing through the county. They're going to be passing through the county because the Shenandoah National Park is a really wonderful place to hike. And I will come out and say that I am in favor of getting as many tax dollars from them as we can. And that's something our businesses have strived to do. And we have to, like everything else we do in this county, be very cognizant of how that will affect neighbors, if we're talking about tourist homes or restaurants or anything else. But again, it is a way for us to add to our tax base, and I'd like to see county government make it a little bit easier. That's it.
Thank you. David Connick.
Thank you. Well, I want to pick up where Cliff left off, or where he started, maybe. I don't agree. I've been intimately involved in it, and I really don't agree that the approval process is too tough or too difficult to navigate if you want to start a new business. And it is reflective of what people want. It's reflective of what's in the comprehensive plan, and it's reflective of what people in the community want. They want to have public hearings. They want to have input, because the purpose of the zoning ordinance and the land use regulations is to protect the quality and the character of the existing neighborhoods. And so if a new business comes in, some places it's fine, other places it could cause traffic, it could cause congestion, it could be noise, it could be something else that people in the neighborhood don't want in their neighborhood. For example, we had, in the last year, we had a shooting training place up in Amosville. All the neighbors were against it. And some people might say, well, you're not very hospitable to new businesses. Well, the neighbors would have said, we're too hospitable to new businesses. We had a thing up in, also in near Flint Hill, up near where Steph Ritter lives, that people wanted to come out once a month and have a culinary kind of meeting and bring people, 15 or 20 people. The whole neighborhood came out. We were all opposed to it because they didn't want the traffic and this and that. Same thing with Susie Coomley's event center up near Huntley. There was a huge opposition to that. And so on the one hand, you could say it's a bad business environment. On the other hand, it gives people who might be adversely affected a mechanism to defend their property right. So I see I'm out of time, so I'll stop.
Thank you. Van Carney.
So I fully agree with Christine in the sense that Rappahannock is a community where we all love living here. And I think we've all been to places where the tourism starts to drown out daily life. And I don't think that anybody here, I can speak for myself, I don't particularly want that. I mean, Rappahannock is special in the sense that it has just this ease, your shoulders relax being here. And so I agree with her. The kind of tourism that our comp plan talks about, that intersection of really agritourism, agriculture and tourism, I think that we could, and this is a conversation that I think that we need to have as a county. I think we need to talk about lodging. We have a lot of folks, wanting to make their homes tourist homes, and we have a lot of people that are coming into our county and then literally leaving the night to come back the next day. And so we need to have a discussion. And I should just add this. I have met so many people that have multiple houses that they own here just to Airbnb. People look for it constantly. So then you have absentee landowners, Airbnb, and so then you can wind up with just different issues. The point is this, is that we have a lot of folks coming in and wanting to spend the night. And I think that we need to have a broader conversation of what that looks like. And I think we could capitalize on it in the sense that we are right next to the park, but we don't want to get overrun. And I think we can balance, but I think we can try to pass to balance that.
Thank you. Thank you. So that wraps up the questions that are addressed to all four of you. And now we're going to move to 4 questions that will be asked to one to each of you that addresses a specific concern that's come to our attention about your candidacy. That sounds very negative. It's not that. It's just that their strengths and things that your supporters are very, very enthusiastic about, and then there are other things that people are raising concerns about or have a question about. So that's what this is going to be. And we're going to start with Christine as the incumbent, and it's about a vote. We've talked a lot about broadband already. The Sperryville Community Alliance has said that in a survey that they want better internet service. But in the recent vote on the specific initiative of expanded broadband access, you abstained, while a majority of the supervisors voted in favor. Your supporters see this as appropriate caution, and you've raised some issues about that. Your critics view it as, gee, this is just a preference for inaction. Why abstain? So this is an invitation to explain that to the people who are scratching their heads about that particular vote.
Sure, and thank you for that question, Tim, and I'm glad to have an opportunity to address this. I would just say that I think everyone in this room knows from the coverage of how we spent the CARES Act money at the end of 2020, if I'd had my way, we would have used about $500,000 of that money to go ahead and address this issue. As it was, that turned out not to be an appropriate use at the time, the way those funds were allocated, and so we were unable to go ahead and move that forward. Instead, we spent it on other things, and the CARES Act money was returned to the county through other channels, largely through public safety, the sheriff's office, and our schools. So that leaves us about $500,000 from the way we wisely spent our CARES Act money to be able to afford to do some things with broadband. I did abstain on that critical vote. There were several things that caused me to abstain that day and several questions that I couldn't have answered. And an abstention, when you don't have your questions answered, is the appropriate vote. It is not a yes, it is not a no. It is that I don't have all the information at this time. I've talked about the RDOF funding, which is our federal funding for a broadband service that requires no dollars from local sources, no money from the county. I spoke to several people in advance of that meeting, and no one could tell me how the challenge process works. There is a challenge process between RDOF and VADI funding. So if you are receiving money from the RDOF auction, that area does not qualify for the Virginia Technical Funding Initiative. So there's an interplay of those two things, and as a result, no one could tell me how that worked. It's never happened before. And so I worried that by pursuing VADI, I would actually jeopardize service through the folks that were benefiting from RDOF. I also am concerned with the good faith clause that's part of our agreement with All Points Broadband, and that prevents us from doing something now for people. We can only talk to All Points Broadband, and that is a serious hindrance in delivering timely broadband service to the people of Rappahannock County. I have one more point, and then I'll wrap it right up. We received an offer of $3.5 million. That's a lot of money on the day of that meeting for a $5.9 million solution. There was no opportunity to secure that funding in any real way in advance of that vote. And it would have been very irresponsible of me to vote in favor of that solution without securing that money. And now, as a member of the Broadband Committee, I am working hard to secure that money and additional funds so that I can vote if we are able to qualify through the VADI process to bring broadband to Rappahannock County. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Cliff, in one of the most interesting recent business decisions in the county, you transformed Mount Vernon Farm into a hospitality enterprise and an environmental refuge. The cows and sheep are gone, but there's a healthy flow of overnight guests and brides and grooms, diners at headmasters, fishermen, and golfers. How will you, as an innovative business manager, relate to neighbors who are perhaps wary of big changes like the one you pulled off, or those who are sticking with the traditional calf and cow operations you decided to step away from?
Well, Tim, I think I already answered that. I buy the beef for the headmaster's
Yes.
pub for my next door neighbor. I came back to Rappahannock and was really looking to find ways to make our property, people use the word sustainable all the time, but if it's losing money, it's not sustainable in my mind. So I was looking for ways to preserve open space and yet at the same time run a property that didn't lose money every year. So I know there are non-traditional things that we do, the restaurant and the bed and breakfast, but they have been successful. They've achieved a lot of honors, and I'm very proud of them. And I hope that I haven't had a negative impact on my neighbors. I know at least the ones that provide us with the beef enjoy having us there. So that's my quick answer to that.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. David, all voters recognize the value of your experience in zoning questions and the many areas covered by the county's comprehensive plan. Your supporters consider you a feisty maverick who will unstintedly protect the county's interests. But the record also includes a string of lawsuits, some of which cost the county tax dollars to defend, and a pattern of some language in public dialogues that your co-citizens or neighbors experienced as insulting or even threatening. Some voters are uncomfortable with that history and wonder how you can manage the side of a supervisor's work that requires a capacity and an intention to work respectfully with a wide range of colleagues and constituents. What can you tell those voters who admire your experience but worry about the history of acrimony and litigation?
Well, thanks for that question. I'm glad to answer it. I hold very dear the principles that are in the Constitution and the statutes of Virginia that say the affairs of government are not intended to be conducted in an atmosphere of secrecy, since at all time the public is to be the beneficiary of any action taken at any level of government. And there's other laws that go to the same effect. I'm a strong believer in open government and transparent government. And unfortunately, what happened and led to the litigation was that those laws were not observed. I'm happy to say that since Mr. Curry arrived, they are being observed, and very rigorously. So, what happened is unfortunate, and it's behind us, and the future, it lies ahead. As far as the civility issues, right, I'm a kind of a rough and tumble guy on RapNet or here or there, and some people appreciate my sense of humor, and others don't appreciate it, and I appreciate that. But in my public conduct and in all the jobs that I have had, from the zoning administrator back in the 1980s to a member of the BZA to planning commission, I have always treated everyone that appeared before the board or came to my office as zoning administrator with the appropriate level of respect and consideration that they are due. One of the things when I was zoning administrator was everybody was treated the same, regardless of what your family name was, regardless of whether you live here for generations, or regardless if you just drove into town. Everybody got the same answer on the same issues. The judges that appointed me to the BZA twice nominated me to be their representative on the Planning Commission. The Board of Supervisors appointed me to the Planning Commission, and at the very first meeting, the Planning Commission voted me in as chairman of the Planning Commission. So I think that my record shows that I earned the respect and admiration of my colleagues. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we didn't, but like Aileen Johnson used to say, you can disagree without being disagreeable. And in my public positions, I have always done that. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Van, voters are drawn to your pragmatism and your decency. And in an aging county, your age can be seen as a positive link with a generation the community, the county, wants to understand, to learn from, to attract, and to retain in the county. But skeptics may see your age as presenting a risk of inexperience. So I'd like to ask you to tell us now about some of what you learned from the experiences you've had in the county, apart from the demands of your own family and your own business. What did you learn from the time you spent with the Benevolent Fund and other things outside your business, working with other people in the county? What have you learned about the county, and what have you learned about your own ability to do those kinds of tasks involving collaboration, persuasion, and learning the facts about situations that were not immediately familiar to you?
Thank you for the question. I view this job of supervisor as a legislator as one of consideration. You have to consider different points of view. You have to consider unintended consequences, as David mentioned. You have to consider where you're going. You have to consider where you've come from. And you have to consider that you and other people, like all of us sitting in this room, don't agree on things. But I bet we all agree that we'd all like to get something done for the greater good. I work with my brothers every day. If you think that we get along every day, or even maybe a minute, you are sorely mistaken. I have had some folks say to me, well, you're only 41. What have you done? I don't know. What have I done? What have you done? I can tell you one thing, that the county that I grew up in is the county that I want my kids to grow up in. And that's going to take some hard work, and it's going to take some vision. And guess what? This county is like, it's like a herd of cats. It is. I mean, you've got people with all differing points of view. I've been doing nothing but going around and knocking on doors and listening to it. But I do hear consensus sometimes. And that is the best thing for a community, is being able to bring people together. So in my experience, what I've learned is to find that thing in the person that I disagree with that I do agree with, and to bond with them that way so we can work things out. And I look forward to that challenge.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you all. That wraps up the questions from the moderator. But those questions were meant to reflect questions and concerns and interests from the voters. But we may not have covered everything. So that's the reason that now we shift to questions directly from the floor. This will be done the same way. I suggest you both say who you are and who you are addressing the question to, and we've still got the 2-minute rule. Sharon Kilpatrick.
I don't need to introduce myself again. I'm concerned, and I don't address this to anybody in particular, about the rate at which we are turning potential rental houses into tourist homes. And it seems to me that we have been way too lenient in letting people do this, and then we deal with the fact that we don't have enough places for people to live. So I don't know what the answer is, but I hope maybe some of you have suggestions. Thank you.
So this could be for anybody, I think. Is that right, Sharon? Yeah. Anybody that's got a thought on this?
Anybody or everybody?
If everybody has a thought?
Sharon, I do agree with you. That's what I was sort of speaking before about, was lodging. I think we need to have a broader, I think the county's missing an opportunity in the sense that people do leave. They come to the brewery and they ask us all the time, where should I stay? You know, I can't stay in the county, whatever. And at the same time, I see all these rental houses being bought up and turned into Airbnbs. So I think it's tricky. And I think we need to have a public discussion about what it is that we want to do so that we don't end up being just a tourist haven, and at the same time, we have people living here. So I think it's a valid question.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? You've all said things about the value of having public hearings on these things. Is there another thought, David?
Yes, there is. When I was on the Board of Zoning Appeals, I think I voted against every single tourist home, just about, because the definition of tourist home in the zoning ordinance is not these Airbnb type things. A tourist home was like the place down in Sperryville, I forget the name of it, the Swiss Chalet and all that, was a tourist home where you had little bungalows or something like that. It was like something like a motel, something like a boarding house or somewhere in between. It was never intended to be what it's kind of morphed into now. And yes, it's eating up a lot of quote unquote affordable housing. Because why would you take a house that you can only rent out for a few $100 or $500 a month or even $1,000 a month when you can fix it up a little bit and turn it into a tourist home for weekend use where you get $500 or $600 a night, not a month. So that's the issue. And I do think that these tourist homes can change the character of a neighborhood. And that's another reason I always really tended to oppose them, because tourist home is a commercial use, and it doesn't belong in a residential neighborhood because it changes the character of the use or the neighborhood. The people next door used to have neighbors that they knew that if their car broke down or they needed their driveway plowed or something, somebody lived there that they knew. Now, every weekend, it's a different bunch of people from who knows where, and that changes the character. And so I think we do need to have a discussion. It's one of the primary areas of the zoning ordinance that needs to be amended. We started on it last year, but unfortunately, we didn't finish.
Okay, let's move to the next question, and I want to make sure that Ms. Smith and Mr. Miller have a chance to respond to your question.
I'd like to address that question briefly, if I could.
Okay. You've got a thought.
I think I agree with both of the other candidates, but I also think that you can't look at this as a zero-sum game. I think somebody who may leave for one weekend out of the month and want to rent their house out is not the same thing as somebody who is actually running a tourist home business. And so to say that every time somebody rents a room out for the night, they're taking a rental out of the equation, I think is misleading. I've said this all night, and I do believe that we need to have some housing for the people who are supporting our services here. But I think to say it's a zero-sum game is a mistake.
Okay.
I would just also add that, we have discussed this many times as a board. Everything from exploring the option of a moratorium on additional Airbnbs, which isn't really realistic. It's a very porous answer and would probably result in litigation and lots more issues. But we really do need to dig into this. What's appropriate exactly for Rappahannock County? In order to do that, 3 of us have to decide that this is an important enough thing to take on. And I don't really think we've been there as a board. I think it's a complex situation, and for some folks, it might be that it might take away a rental option for them. I know that there are a lot of local families that are devoted to making sure that there are local affordable rental options for people in the community.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud to know a lot of those people. But the argument that's always been made for why B&Bs are good has been made by my peer, Mr. Parrish, on the board, because there may be people that are trying to age in place or have additional income and are maybe at the lower end of the income disparity. And it allows them an opportunity to realize an additional income stream and maybe do things that they wouldn't ordinarily be able to do.
And stay in their houses, maybe.
Yes, sir.
Okay, next question. Why don't you direct it, if you can, to one of the candidates, because I'm just conscious of time and I want to get as many voices from the floor as possible.
Okay, well, that's where I was going.
Good.
This county has a long history of good old boy politics and behind-the-scenes decisions. Mr. Miller, Mr. Carney, both of your businesses have zoning issues. Your driving range, and when you moved the brewery from commercial zone to agricultural zone without a permit. All right, could you please explain how you'll prevent this county trend from continuing?
I did not have an issue with zoning, Paige. You are incorrect. So we are a farm brewery.
So
We're a farm brewery.
Why
by
did
right.
the zoning administrator recommend that you have an application? Why did you submit an application from a lawyer who knows zoning and then withdraw it? So
Paige,
there must have been an issue.
Your facts are wrong, Paige. That's why. What you're speaking of is the Rappahannock Farmers Market. And we withdrew it because I got a piece of mail from the zoning administrator because we weren't running a farmer's market because we're not doing any commerce. It's only pickup. All the vendors didn't want to do commerce anymore. So we stopped that application. She sent me an email, said the use you're doing is totally fine. We
Thank
are
you.
a farm brewery. We are allowed to do that by right.
Thank you. Next question.
Well, can I address mine, Bill?
Next question.
My name is Tom Junk from Sperryville. I'm going to address Christina and Mr. Miller. We have a real problem in Sperryville with water. There's wells that have gone dry. I know Christina has a well for her house. I know Mr. Miller has a well for his golf course. What's going to happen to the average person when they have to drill a well because the use of water in Sperryville? This is an imminent problem. There's 2 wells that have run dry. This year, we've had rain, so what do you both plan on doing about the average person running out of water? Most average people in Sperryville don't have $20,000 for a well. So this is a problem that will be in the future, and it also has to do with the growth plans in Sperryville too. Thank you.
So these two candidates, please. Christine,
Christine, go ahead.
I think I've gone first before. Can't somebody go first?
I'd be more than happy to address this.
You've got somebody to your left who's willing to go first.
Your
Mr.
question
Miller.
had many parts, and I'll start with the golf course. We brought a geologist in and had a book that was about 80 pages long that talked about water refresh rates and things like that. Our well is all the way on the other side, and according to this geologist, would have no effect whatsoever on the wells in Sperryville. I do think it is an issue, and I think When we started doing county planning a long time ago, we said expand the village from the villages. And Sperryville does have a water problem, and I think it needs to be addressed. But I think trying to expand in an area that doesn't make sense for expansion because you don't have great water is not a good strategy. So I think from that perspective, we need to relook at a whole lot of the things that we decided 50 years ago were a good idea.
And I would just say that we had a wonderful, robust discussion on the Board of Supervisors recently about the options for beaver dam analogs and other water resource measuring tools. There's, you've all seen, I'm sure, the measuring stations on local streams. We can implement more of those. We're going to start measuring wells, and actually county administration and our lawyer are looking at options for how we can track the data better so we can get a better hold on these numbers. The other thing I would say is this should be a critical criteria for approving new businesses.
Right. Thank you.
Could I say
Next
something
question.
about- Tim, could I say something about that and from the zoning aspect?
That would fit.
Thanks. Real quickly, one of the deficiencies in this thing across the road from the high school, the Blue Rock, that recently submitted an application, Cliff mentioned his golf course, and I happen to recall that when they put that in, they did do a study. And the recommendation of the Planning Commission was that they should have a limit of 5,000 gallons a day. I think the proposal was to be able to use 10,000 to water the grass and the greens and so forth. And so the Board of Supervisors, in its wisdom, decided to split the difference, not on the basis of any scientific study or anything like that. They just said, well, let's go to the middle and have 7,500, which that's what they did. Well, be that as it may, this proposal across the street was going to use somewhere around 20,000 gallons per day. And I just want to point out, this is one of the aspects of our zoning ordinance that is so deficient. Fauquier County has a requirement that any kind of commercial or residential development that is going to use more than 10,000 gallons per day has to do a geologic or hydrological study at the expense of the applicant and present the evidence and show that it's not going to damage any neighboring wells and so forth. We don't have that in our ordinance, and we need it. It's one of the many, many, many things where our 35-year-old ordinance is completely out of date and doesn't do what it needs to do to protect people, because it's one thing to talk about traffic and noise and lighting, but what about if your well goes dry? That's a whole different ballgame.
I think so. Thanks a lot. Next question.
Yes, my name is Tommy Atkins, and I'm from Amosville, but I do own property in Spurrville as well. And it's not necessarily a question, but it's of a concern to me. We've heard a considerable amount of talk here this afternoon about broadbanding, and that to be used to bring young families into the county. I've not heard a word been said about doing anything to keep our homegrown young families in the county. I've not heard a word from anybody about that. Then we talk about the aging, the silverheads, the grayheads, which a lot of us are in here. And yes, it's great about the senior center in Scrabble. That's great. But I've not heard a word about doing anything to reduce our tax that we have to pay our seniors. We only are on a fixed income, and we don't have the money that the wealthy ones are in this county. They can afford to pay this tax. But we, the ones that have been here, as you've labeled us, it's been here, we don't have the wealth that most of you people have. And we cannot continue to pay this real estate property tax that's being carried on our backs. So it's totally unfair. That's all I have to say. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy.
Thank you. So, I think what is there, he did not address that question to anybody in particular.
Well,
but I think if people, anybody wants to step up and others can join in. That's a very central question taxes.
Well, I'm going to do something that probably I might not ought to do, but, that's a tradition on the Board of Supervisors, especially of the guy from our district who's retiring saying, well, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to anyway. In any event, one thing that was promised in the 1980s when it was adopted was to take a look at land use taxation, because there's a lot of people that take advantage of that, and that does shift the tax burden onto the smaller lot owners. And I'm not saying I propose to do away with land use, so don't misquote me on that. I'm saying that I know for a fact that when land use was passed in, I think, 1980, it was promised by the board that they would take a look at it after 5 or 6 years, because there was a lot of opposition to it amongst the small lot owners. They promised they would take a look at it after 5 or 10 years, I don't remember exactly, and reevaluate. Well, that was 40 years ago, 41 years ago. They've never done that analysis, and I think we should have a discussion about it and see if there's a way to provide tax relief to the people that Tommy is talking about. Number 2, I already mentioned it, so I won't go through it again, the family division. Provisions of the subdivision ordinance that provide exceptions for giving your kids a lot have to be revised and have to be looked at. It's been on the agenda of the Planning Commission for 2 years, and we haven't gotten to it. Or they haven't gotten to it, I'm off. So I think that's a thing that needs to be done, because that will provide some relief so that the people who have lived here for generations can give their children and grandchildren a place where they can build a house. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments on this question?
Sure.
And you've got your wrap-up comments. You don't have to say everything now.
I just wanted to touch a little bit on what David was saying. I've heard, I was talking to some constituents over the weekend, and they were able to exercise their ability to build a house that their folks had been able to carve off a piece of land for them, but they could barely do it because nothing in this area is inexpensive. Nothing in this area is cheap, especially building houses. So I think taking a broader look exactly to Tommy's point at what steps can we take for local folks that might not have the means, because the reality is that we do live in an area where it's just not inexpensive to live. So I think it's a salient thing to look at, and thank you for bringing it up, Tommy. I appreciate it.
I would just add, too, that I've reviewed with the Commissioner of Revenue some of the tax credits that we gave previously to seniors before my time on the board. At one point, there was a second qualifying tier besides the 50% tax credit that some folks qualify for. There was also, if you met a certain amount of the COLA, you could qualify for like a 25% tax credit and not have to pay that portion of your tax bill. And I think that's something we should look at as a board.
We were doing an analysis for the paper that ran a month ago about taxes and land use and the effects of this. And at one time, the numbers at the end just weren't matching up. And we were trying to figure out what the whole was. And the treasurer told us, this is because one set of numbers did not reflect the credits that were applied for older citizens and citizens in particular need. So there is a mechanism for doing some of that, I know.
That's correct. And there was a second tier, and that second tier was eliminated a number of years ago. And it may be time to go back and review and see what the consequences or results of those decisions have been.
Yeah. Now we have one more question, I think, and then I want to move on to the final statements from the 4 candidates. But the last question is yours, sir.
Yes, John Kaiser. I'd like to make a comment or two that partly in response to the previous gentleman's concerns.
Microphone.
Oh, yeah. I want to use a dirty word, trailer parks. How many people in the room here know that Rappahannock has a trailer park? So we have trailer parks. They're not the one that I know about, which is in Amosville. There may be others. Are pretty trashy looking, and I wouldn't be encouraging, or I think anybody really wants to encourage trailer parks that have that aesthetic, which is no aesthetic. But there's no reason that I can imagine, although I'm sure there are plenty you can come up with, to somehow amend the ordinances that would make it possible to, or at least easier to, create a trailer park complex subject to many things, including an aesthetic norms. I've been in countries and in places in the United States and even in Alexandria where trailer parks are actually very attractive and they're well maintained and quite livable. And I'm just wondering whether the county might want to consider an ordinance specifically for encouraging trailer house development, which we'll have to give a different name since that would offend lots of people, but that would be the basic concept, is to make modular housing or whatever you want to call it. But just a thought.
Okay,
Thank you, John.
thank you.
I would just say that this question kind of fits, to my mind, in the larger context of affordable housing and what and where and what it looks like and when we do it. That is a question that is addressed in the Code of Virginia. And the Code of Virginia is very specific that we should take a regional approach when we look at our affordable housing solutions. And so there was a report put out by the RRRC, our regional commission, at the end of last year. Probably not the greatest year to try to put this kind of reporting together, but they did it. And we should work with the regional commission to see what the recommendations or the ideas for Rappahannock County that are appropriate to our county should be. And it should occur in the context of the larger discussion of what kind of affordable housing is appropriate to Rappahannock County, where should it be, and what should it look like.
Okay, so if possible, I'd like to, because we're bumping up against the time when the school's going to turn out the lights on us, and I really want to preserve the time for your summary statements, because there are lots of little issues that have come up, and I'm sure you've taken notes on things that, you know, you want to make sure people understand, or you want to get back to something that possibly was left in a state of confusion, or you just want to remind people of something. So the remaining 8 minutes are yours, two, and it's your final summing up and gather the loose ends and whatever remaining statements you want to make to this group of voters. So I think we'll start with you, the incumbent.
Thank you, Tim. Again, my name is Christine Smith, and it's been my honor for the past 4 years to represent the people of Piedmont District on the Board of Supervisors. I want to talk about things that I've heard tonight and that I know are important to the people of my district. One is the reassessments that are going on now. I hear a lot about this, and I know this is critical to a lot of families and seniors. I want people to understand that we only voted to do these reassessments because it is required that they be done every 7 years by the Code of Virginia. So we did vote to do the reassessments, but I am telling you, I was the first member of the board to say, we have got to go back and lower the tax rate so that these reassessments do not become a large automatic tax hike for the people of Rappahannock County. And with your vote before or on November 4th, I will do that. We have this tranche of ARPA funding already in our bank account. That's the American Rescue Plan Act funding. We have about $700,000. We have about another $700,000 on the way. It can be spent for critical infrastructure needs like broadband, water and sewer, and other items that may come out in the final decisions for guidance. We've already allocated $65,000 of that money to help the Water and Sewer Authority. I will ensure that we spend these ARPA funds and any other federal dollars that come our way in prudent ways that prepare us to succeed in the future and set us up with some future-proof solutions for utilities and technology. As someone who comes from a small rural place, I realize how delicate and wonderful Rappahannock County is. The place where I grew up as a child has been ruined by strip malls and tract housing and subdivisions. I understand how very wonderful and delicate the ecosystem of Rappahannock County is, and I will work hard to protect it and preserve our rural heritage and plan effectively for us to have a successful future. When I initially ran for the Board of Supervisors, I had no ideas about pandemics or refuse systems failing and having to go back and restructure all that. But I promise you, you have my commitment that I will work hard for the whole county and especially the people of Piedmont District with your vote to reelect me to represent you on the Board of Supervisors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cliff.
Thank you, Tim, and businesses of Rappahannock. I happen to be the proud owner of several businesses in Rappahannock, and I'm proud of it because it means to me a group of people working together to achieve a common goal. It means teamwork, it means collaboration, it means friendship and caring, it means disagreements and compromise. These are the qualities that get things done. We have important issues to address in this county, as we've discovered tonight. Our tax base is almost entirely based on property taxes, which places a huge burden on working families and fixed income retirees. We have poor, spotty internet service in an age when connectivity is essential. Our public schools don't get our fair share of state tax dollars. And last but certainly not least, as I've stressed many times tonight, our volunteer and paid service industry workers are hurting. Let's help them. Most of us agree on the important things. We like open space. We enjoy a clear view of the stars at night. We appreciate peace and quiet. We don't like sitting in traffic. We want to feel safe. We don't want any more taxes. We don't want development. We want to live in a community. So let's start there. Let's work on these issues together. We need to find housing solutions for the young people that want to live and work here. Let's make Rappahannock the kind of place where our children want to stay and take over the family business. This needs to start with board members working in concert with county employees and citizens to create consensus and work on problems as a team. My wife, Jordan, and our daughter, Anna, and I went for a walk this morning up on Turkey Mountain. And while we were out there walking, I said to her, you know, my great-great-great-grandfather and Anna's great-great-great-great-grandfather was probably doing this same thing 200 years ago. We have a deep sense of connection to this place. And if you vote for me on November 2nd, I'll work with you to preserve and protect our home. Thank you.
Thank you. David.
Thank you. Well, I again want to thank the organizers and you, Tim. You've done a really good job and appreciate it. You know, folks, most of you out in the audience, except for the school board people who are here, have never had to sit up here, have never run for public office, and have never had to go through what we all had to go through the past few days of getting ready for this and wondering, oh God, what is he going to ask us and what topics are going to come up? And so it's a very nerve-wracking type of experience to get ready for. And I just want to say that this has been such a pleasure to be here tonight and to have such a constructive discussion of so many different issues and an opportunity for me to present my views and to listen to the other people, the other candidates up here, because as everyone has said, and as I think John Sullivan said, I think we can all stipulate, as lawyers say, we all love Rappahannock. We all want to keep it the way it is to a certain extent. We all want to improve the things that need improvement. We all want better broadband. We all want the courthouse saved. We all want quality emergency services. The question that the voters have to decide, and I have to agree with Larry Grove, which Larry was probably back there thinking, well, that doesn't happen often, but but I have to agree with him. It's like hiring somebody for a job. The question's not what you want, and it's how you're going to get it. And to articulate a bunch of lofty goals and beautiful ideas about what kind of community you want to live in is all terrific. But when you're hiring somebody to implement it, it's like hiring a county administrator. You got to find the person with the best qualifications and a track record of getting things done. And that's the issue that the voters have to decide. And I think tonight's forum has been an excellent opportunity for you to observe all of us and make that decision. I just want to say in closing, I am really looking forward to going to work for all of you in January and making a positive contribution to our Board of Supervisors and to our lovely Rappahannock County. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben, closing statement.
I grew up here. I'm from here. Rappahannock has made me who I am. Many of you probably knew my parents and my grandparents. My Rappahannock includes all types of people. My Rappahannock is neighbors helping neighbors. My Rappahannock has 1,000 great views and as many differing points of view. And I will dedicate myself, much like David said, to guarding the Rappahannock that my grandparents knew and loved. My vision is a county where we know our neighbors and we can keep this place rural. Make it easier for our children to grow up here and stay here, as Tommy was saying. With fresh eyes and ears, that is my plan. My plan is to take each issue as it comes with input from the good citizens of my district and this county. I'm the candidate that will protect Rappahannock. And I'm the candidate that will make life easier and a little bit better for the folks that live here. What you get from an Eagle Scout is honesty, integrity, hard work, resilience, reliability, and a willingness to work with other people with whom you disagree and to get something done for the greater good. This November 2nd, you'll have a clear choice. I'm the candidate that will keep Rappahannock open, beautiful. I'm the candidate that will protect Rappahannock. I'm the candidate that's going to make life a little bit easier and a little bit better for the folks here in Rappahannock. There's a lot of different ways you could be spending a Saturday night. But coming in a room to discuss is at the heart of a functioning democracy. And as citizens, we hammer things out with honesty and integrity, fairness and kindness. Thank you to my wife, Julia, and my 3 boys. Thank you to Tim. Thank you to the businesses of Rappahannock. And thank you to the Rappahannock News.
Okay, now our thanks is to you. You spent time getting ready. You spent time coming here. You had to worry about the kinds of questions that might come up and be asked of you and wonder what you would say. You've gotten data out. You've helped all of us know you a little bit better. And I think you've advanced the cause of an informed vote in November. So we owe you a big round of applause.
That it?
Teresa?
What? Can we take our masks off now?
Very well done.
What?
Masks are optional at this time.